Check. Sound good?
As good as we're gonna sound,
right?
At least for me, I think this is about as good as it's gonna get.
So I was telling my wife the other day that that I was going to have you up, right? And
Yeah.
I was kind of explaining. I was like, yeah, he's got a podcast, Punk is Dad, and da da da. And she's like, oh, Punk is dead. She's like, that's cool. And I'm like, no, honey, in that like condescending voice that we tend to use, right? Like, no, Punk is Dad. And she's like, no, dumbass, Punk is dead from an album or something back in the day. And I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah, because Punk was obviously never. Was not my thing.
No, I mean, there's the Exploited. They have a song called "Punk's Not Dead," and then there's always been this kind of philosophy that true punk is dead. But I think we just kind of grow into it more. That's all that happens. You embrace it full force and keep going with it. And
is there a definition of true punk?
No, dude. First and foremost, I am definitely not the punk rock police. So if there's one, I've had a few conversations where I've talked about different types of music, and specifically the genre of Sublime or Cottonmouth Kings, kind of like the white boy reggae kind of sound.
Okay.
And we shit on it a lot, and there's a lot of things that are just associated with it. There's the stoner kind of stereotypical person who listens to it and has a hacky sack with them at all times.
Right. Yeah, I remember that time.
And but you can't fault them for that. That's just what they like, and if that's what they like, and as long as it makes you happy, who's to say what is punk and what's not punk? There's people who grew up, as the Clash were coming out still, and they'll tell you that.
That would be me.
Oh yeah, but I mean, the thing about the Clash is they encompass so many different sounds. They went from street punk, they did rockabilly songs, they did reggae songs. They really just encompassed the entire spectrum of music so much. There's even been hip hop songs that have sampled the Clash. You look at them and that they're kind of, I'd say they're the proto for what real punk is. It's just everything, and as long as you're happy doing it and you're doing it without rules and you just accept whatever comes your way, that's punk rock. And punk rock in of itself is there's no rules, but there are rules.
The rule is that there's no rule.
Yeah, it's kind of like skateboarding. There's unspoken rules, but you can do whatever you want in skateboarding. But there are rules. There's certain things you just don't do. It's I guess you could say they're unwritten rules, and there's just like anything else, any kind of weird kind of community or something that people hold dear to themselves, and it defines a lot of who they are as their personality. There's always gatekeeping, and there's always going to be people who are going to say oh, I can't believe you're wearing that, let's throw Metallica out there because why not? Oh, I can't believe you're wearing that Metallica song. Name 3 Metallica songs that aren't on the Black album. Name 3 songs on what's a good one? And Justice for All.
Right.
I can just tell you that those are all really good songs. I'm not really into Metallica so much these days, but Seek and Destroy is such a good song.
Right.
There's a lot of good thrash metal on Ride the Lightning, and you can hear a lot of people who are just learning about Metallica today, and you can hear it in how they're expressing themselves. Maybe they're musicians and it's their first time hearing those Kurt Hammett riffs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just going with it, or it's some kid who's just hearing the Ramones for the first time, and they're just going with, 4 chords, scraping your knuckles across your strings and just destroying your hands, and just loud, fast, and anything, below that is not going to cut it for them.
I've always felt like I'm about 10 years behind the times musically as to what's popular at that time. So I didn't even really get into Metallica until the 90s.
Hmm.
and they'd been in, they'd been going since like the early 80s. And, I would see the kids at school, rocking the t-shirts and that kind of stuff. But back in the 80s, I was still all into like hair bands and ballads and all that kind of stuff, and didn't really get into, like I said, get into Metallica until the 90s.
Well, if you listen to a lot of like early 70s kind of indie, or I should say more like mid to late 70s indie rock, a lot of it turns into like kind of this proto punk sound. So you'll have bands, like, okay, let's take uh the Who, and let's talk about a lot of their songs, and you can hear the the speed in it, you can hear the intensity, and ultimately that ends up, turning into bands like the New York Dolls, and they took that same kind of like 70s glam rock intensity, just turned it up a notch, and that's all everyone
Hmm.
just keeps doing. Everyone just keeps taking it and putting their own little spin on it and changing in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ramones, they took what was in front of them and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna do this. You have bands like the Misfits and uh, who are a big influence on Metallica. I mean, all Metallica did is took a lot of Misfit songs and added a lot more chords and made them
Hmm.
a lot more twinkly. Uh, the Misfits just took Elvis songs and made them fast and punk rock and like really sludgy bass, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's the same, song structure. It's the same um, melodic harmonies and the singing. There's like wails and woes and stuff like that you'd find in that kind of really mid-century 1950s, 1960s sound. They're just taking the sound of their, what their parents grew up listening to and what they listened to in the car at home, and they're just turning it up to 11. That's all you do.
Yeah.
And that's
Loud. Make it loud.
loud, make it loud.
louder. Yeah. I remember, like, I think the best album of all time for me is always going to be Back in Black, AC/DC.
My son just heard Back in Black for the first time. It's
Really?
really funny because there's all these songs that he's hearing for the first time through animated movies that he's watched,
Mm,
like whether it's been like an Addams Family movie where he heard the Ace of Spades by Motorhead for the first time.
right.
He just heard Back in Black. I think it's in the Minions movie, so he heard that, and
Okay.
so he likes those songs because you, um, he equates them to the cartoons and movies that he enjoys. So
Sure.
he really likes to hear those
Sure.
songs. He got into Walk by Pantera through it's in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Whoa.
So I'll take him to jujitsu and he'll say, put the Dr. Eggman song on. I'm like, you want to listen to Walk? And he's like, yeah, put Walk on. I'm like,
Just get him
you're,
going.
you're heavy, dude.
That's good. Let's go, Dad.
Let's
go,
it's go
Dad.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember that opening scene of Iron Man 1, and that first riff comes out with Back in Black. You're just like, oh, this movie's just going to be the best ever.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing about music. Music is so powerful. It gets so many emotions out of us. There's a song in all of our hearts that we can equate to like different moments in our lives, whether it's something like amazing happening, something incredibly sad happening, like a feeling of intense anger. That's the beauty of music. Is music will always have a place in our emotions. It'll always make you feel a certain way about certain stuff. And that's what I love so much about music and listening to music and discovering music and making music a part of my everyday life, whether it's what I'm listening to, I'm just walking around, what I'm listening to when I'm driving, what I'm listening to while I'm skating. Um, you know, a weird thing I like to do, I just like to put my headphones on and walk around Target.
Nice.
It is probably the most cathartic, relaxing thing that I can do.
Really?
And then,
Yeah.
you do some shopping too. You walk out and you're like, dude, how'd I spend $100?
Yeah, like $500 later. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what emotion or what did or does punk rock do for you?
Punk rock for me always reminds me how young I truly am.
Mm.
I'm turning 40 this year, and that's kind of like everyone says, oh, that's like a big one. 40 is like a milestone birthday. You know, it reminds me, yeah, I'm still young. I'm still listening to stuff that's fast. I can still go fast. Um, there's this famous quote from Thrasher magazine where the editor of Thrasher magazine said, "If it's getting too scary for you, stop." And I think that's what I love about punk rock is it's never too scary for me. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter like which punk rock it is. There's so much of it, and I've listened to some really interesting stuff throughout the years. And some of it's like introduced to you through the weirdest means possible. Like I never listened to Mayhem before, COVID hit, but lo and behold, the COVID pandemic hit, and I'm stuck at home watching Netflix, and here we are, me and my wife are watching Lords of Chaos, which is this like dramatization of the story of Mayhem, this true black Norwegian death metal band
Mhm.
that there's a suicide involved, there's like some cannibalism, like the guy's like,
Ooh, good times.
oh, no, just there's a murder, there's church building burnings. It's like this, the whole story's insane. And what makes it even crazier is that it's true. And I would never have gotten into listening to black metal if it wasn't for the fact that I was stuck inside for however long.
Yeah.
You tend to discover a lot of punk rock through listening to punk rock. Uh, I listen to a lot of cover albums, and you'll hear a punk rock band doing their interpretation of another punk rock band song, and then it turns out that that's an interpretation of another punk rock band song.
Mhm.
And you just keep going down this rabbit hole of finding all these new punk bands, and that's half the fun of it. Or just going to the record store and just flipping through all the stacks and finding albums just because they look cool. Like you may have never even heard it before in your entire life, but
Yeah.
the album artwork just looks cool. So you get it, you put it on your turntable, you turn it on, and just sit through it. And sometimes they're winners and sometimes they're losers. But for the most part, I'd have to say punk rock just encompasses like everything that I'm about. It's just let's stay young as long as we possibly can. Let's let's pass on a lot of the great lessons that we've learned from punk rock. There's some bad stuff too in punk rock. There's a lot of, automatically always people think about there's a lot of drug use in a lot of the punk rock scene.
Mm.
There's a lot of abusive, self-destructive behavior in the punk rock scene, but that goes through any scene whatsoever.
Sure.
Um, but there's a lot of good stuff too along the way. There's a lot of good positive energy. There's a um, lot of community in of itself. Like you have all these little microcosms that some of them get along with others and some of them don't, but for the most part, they're all in the same boat. And you'll meet someone and you can tell right away if they're in the same tribe as you. You can tell just by what they're listening to, how they're talking, what they're wearing. Um, you'll have this automatic connection. And it's the weirdest, like, I always think like the weirdest one is always when you talk about like two-tone ska and its kind of inclusion in the punk scene. Um, you're talking about like British mods and also at the same time like British skinheads, and they're all united around this like one sound
Mhm.
that's distinctly British in of itself. So you talk about bands like The Beat, The Selector, or The Specials, and it's weird to see like those two groups of people all get together behind these two bands. They're two very different scenes. I mean, like you look at like English skinheads and you're automatically in the realm of like extreme violence and
Right.
drinking
Yeah.
and fighting. And then
Yeah.
you look at like British mods and you're like, oh, they're just, they're going around just in their Sunday best all the time and on their cafe racer motorcycles. And
Yeah, whenever I think of British skinheads, it's just like, yeah, the combat boots, the jack boots with the red laces and the wife beaters, and yeah, just the extreme violence, just going out and just causing mayhem and havoc.
yeah, but they're all united around this one distinct sound, which is very characteristically British. But again, it's a combination of two separate things. So you take Jamaican ska and you take British punk and you put them together and you kind of roll it up and you get this amalgamation of two-tone ska.
Mhm.
And to this day, I think there's a huge need for more and more people to do things like that, where let's bring these two communities that probably would never have a whole lot together. Let's put it together and see what we get. And again, that's the beauty of punk. There's no rules. Just put it together and see what happens.
Yeah. Tell me about growing up. Tell me about your childhood.
Oh man. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My parents divorced when I was in the third grade. There's like a distinct year that I remember it all started to go down during the second grade into the third grade. Primarily lived in a one-parent household with my mom and my sister. Got into skateboarding led getting into punk rock, and somehow I didn't end up too much of a dipshit. And
what was it about punk that spoke to you back then? Like, how old are you at that point?
Oh man, I want to say like 6th or 7th grade. But there's like two very specific albums that came out during that year, and so that was Green Day's Dookie album, and then Offspring's Smash. Yeah, so those are two really important albums in the punk scene of themselves. You could equate them to like Rockets to Russia from the Ramones, and also maybe they're probably right up there with God Save the Queen by the Sex Pistols. They're these two very distinct generational albums, and opened the doors for so many other people to get into punk rock. And that's what today, like, we look at Green Day's Dookie album and it's like, it's highly produced. It's, is it really, really true punk? Is it more of like 90s alternative? And I'd say it's a punk album. It's fast. It's heartfelt. If for a lot of musicians, they'll tell you that, the drummer for Green Day, Trey Cool, he has really good licks when it comes to the drums. So musically, they're extremely proficient. They're writing about what's going on around them at the time. And, even as like a stupid kid, you don't understand all the songs, but you're listening to a song like Burnout, and it doesn't dawn on you until you're much older that this song is truly about like the problem with being bored. And what happens when you're bored, and what people tend to do when they're bored, and what emotions you feel when you're bored. You feel yourself like stuck to your couch. As an adult, your boredom might turn into depression or something like that. But as a kid, you're just like, oh, it's about being bored and jerking off. Like, that's how bored you are. You're just like, oh, I have nothing else to do.
Might as well jerk off.
Yeah, I'll jerk off. I'll pull the horn a little bit, see what happens. There's some love songs on there. There's songs about the East Bay in Oakland, and growing up in San Francisco, you relate to it because you know what it's like growing up in the Bay Area. I'd say it's more New York than anywhere else in the world.
What was going on in the Bay Area during that time? Are we talking about the early 90s?
We're talking, yeah. So we're talking about early to mid 90s, which is really important in this whole series, like this whole story. Like I said, like you have Green Day's Dookie, Offspring Smash. The Offspring Smash album is one of the best selling punk rock albums of all time to this day. And when record companies started to see those two bands take off, that's when the majors started buying up more punk rock bands. So there's an influx of punk rock sound, specifically the West Coast punk rock sound. So you have like the Northern California Green Day sound, and then you have more of the Southern California Offspring sound, which is the beginning of a lot of the skate punk that's going to come out around the same time. So you're going to see a lot of bands like NoFX, Pennywise. What's some of the good ones? I can't. Like, I'm usually like really good at like naming bands off the top of my head, like
sure.
From an Epitaph sampler. But basically, like it was like the birth of the Epitaph sampler. Then you had bands from the Bay Area like Green Day. You'd have Jawbreaker. Um, there's so many more that I can't think of, and so
Yeah.
many more that have just like disappeared over time.
So what's going on in your life during
Just
that time?
skateboarding, a lot. It's that this is like the '90s renaissance of skateboarding, um, and specifically the San Francisco scene is just killing it. We have guys like Mike Carroll, the entire like FTC team. Um, the girl chocolate teams are taking off. It's a time when guys are riding like super tiny little wheels, and it's just so they can like roll and do these very complex like flip tricks. It's the beginning of like the flip trick um, world. Again, I'm a latchkey kid.
Right.
My mom's got to work. She's got to keep an eye on me at the same
Right.
time. My sister's off doing her thing, getting ready to go off to college and stuff. So my mom just goes, "Hey kid, like here's your skateboard. Here's $20." Uh, she worked in downtown San Francisco, so she would take me with her. She'd feed me a big breakfast and say,
Yeah.
drop me off in the middle of San Francisco
Yeah.
around 10 o'clock in the morning and say, okay, I'll meet you back here like 10 o'clock at night. Good luck. Don't.
Wow. So you were down there in the mean streets of San Francisco, just all on your own, trying to figure out life, huh?
Yeah. And would I let my kid do that today? No, I always I'm like, dude, how did I not die? I remember going through some like really bad neighborhoods on a skateboard. But again, it's you're just a kid on a skateboard and no one pays you any mind. You're not bothering anyone. You're not, wrecking anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so nobody mind. I was going through like some hoods, some projects to get from place to place or spot to spot. And the only people who would actually get mad would be other skateboarders because again, it was a very like tumultuous time for skateboarding. Street skating was where it's at. There isn't a lot of skate parks. Skate parks are super
Mm,
prevalent now. You can, like throw a rock and hit a skate park.
right. So
And
skaters had their spot and they
you
didn't
had your
want
spot.
anybody else coming in and
Yeah, because you showed up and then it became a bust. And the cops would show up and, ticket you, take your skateboard, all sorts of different stuff. So you had to like it was territorial, like you didn't go and ruin someone else's spot. And when you get to a spot and you were there first, you skated it, you respected it, and went on your merry way. And that's it. That was skateboarding in San Francisco.
wow. And you're how old at this point?
Like sixth, seventh grade,
Wow.
going in probably into eighth.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very similar for me growing up, latchkey kid from the time I was in like 5th grade all the way through high school, both parents working. And yeah, I mean, like the sun would come up and you would leave and you would do your thing and you wouldn't see your parents until they got home from work at, 6, 7 or, later at night. And you were basically just like your own little person, just doing your thing. And hopefully, hopefully you were kind of on a path that wasn't too destructive or
And that's like the crazy thing about the punk rock and skateboarding scene is both of those scenes there's so much self-destruction in it. Like you hear, everyone always assumes like skateboarders, you're smoking weed, you're just causing havoc and problems and stuff like that. And yeah, that's
Sure.
true. That's absolutely true. I remember being a freshman in high school and hanging out with my skate buddy Eric, and I can tell you exactly which train we would catch. He lived in the Avenues, uh, in San Francisco. So that's a neighborhood that's like sits just south of Golden Gate Park, and it's just this big long hill with these streets that just go across. So that's why they call it the Avenues because
Mhm.
it's just like First Avenue, Second Avenue, Third, blah 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 blah. Go to his pad, drop off our stuff, get our skateboards, you know, get a couple bucks. You go find a homeless guy, get him to buy you a Mickey's 40, and then we get on the N Judah line. And we would literally like just sit on the train and drink our 40s because no one cared because you're just dumb little skater punks.
Yeah.
Drink our 40s. We had like a little boom box with a tape deck in it. So we'd have all of our, our songs playing.
Right.
And we like would go skate the hills. So you're bombing hills. I don't know how I died. I know I fell at least a couple times, but I don't know how I died. And, get back to his house in the middle of the night and crash and then do the whole thing the next day. Same thing.
Was school a thing or not so much?
No, school is a thing. Like you're going to school. That's like you're when you're microcosms where you meet other like-minded people, and that's again one of those great things about skateboarding and punk rock is for whatever reason it is like a black hole magnetic zero for weirdos. So anyone who didn't fit in with anyone else, like you knew exactly where you're gonna go. You're just magnetized to this other groups of kids. So there's like goth kids who are in our in our little circle of friends, and there were skater kids, and there were stoner kids and burnout kids, and there was kids that are like way into street punk, and kids who are way into like just regular punk, if that's what you want to call it. And we all just united around the fact that we're all kind of in the same sounds, and we're all kind of weirdos because we didn't really connect with anyone else outside of ourselves. We,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were little shits. We probably thought we were way, more enlightened and smarter than the other kids. We definitely weren't. And but it was nice. Like you felt like you were a part of something. You didn't feel like you were alienated from the world because you knew you had other like weirdos and losers to hang out with, and that's what
Yeah.
was great about it.
Yeah, I can only remember. So I was in like a kid of the '80s. I'm 52 this year, and so the punk scene for us was just like two or three kids in school with the leather jackets, and big mohawks was a thing back then, and it was like for for a kid who was into metal at the time and feeling very disaffected, like the punk folks seemed to take that to like the next level. Like it wasn't so much about community for them. It seemed like I am an island in a stream and I don't give a fuck, and I am perfectly happy being here. And of course everybody would I mean, because Mohawks were pretty fringe back then. I mean, and these guys were fringe among the fringe. Like we as long haired kids listening to heavy metal, we thought we were edgy, and these guys were just like again taking that to the next level. Um, and yeah, they would just walk around with their heads up, but just ignoring everything that was going on around them, and you kind of had to respect that. Like everybody was looking for their community, and being in kind of the heavy metal scene. You were again we thought we were edgy, but we were also looking for our own tribe.
Mhm.
And so it was a little bit different down in San Diego where I grew up. Whereas it sounds like in San Francisco there was a big scene going on up
Oh
there.
yeah, it's the San Francisco scene. It's having grown up in San Francisco. That's why there's so many things that don't weird me out. Like I'm not weirded out by like homeless people or homeless encampments,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Like seeing two dudes kiss is not a weird thing for me. Seeing drag queens and things like that. That's that's the Folsom Street Fair. That's like a thing that happens like every year and it's celebrated. We'd always joke like having gotten older and being old enough to legally drink in bars. The best bars to go drink at were always like the gay bars. They were just so much fun, and the drinks were always cheap, and it was a good time, and
Right.
everyone was just happy to be there at the end of the day. The punk rock bars though, those were like the CD bars. Those were the ones I can that like there's a place on Haight Street called Murrio's, and that place was a shithole. But it was fun, and part of it, the fun was like the danger of going there.
Sure.
It, there is a club we used to go to called the Pound, and the fun story behind that place was, being a little shithead kid and you don't know what's going on. It's right there in the China Basin, so it's on the docks. It's a bar on the docks. That's where all the porters would drink like midday and then go back to work and hopefully not crash a crane or something like that.
Yeah.
And at night it got really dangerous out there because that's where all the crackheads were. And so when you'd go see a punk rock show there, you know, if you didn't have a big enough crowd, or if you were like trying to walk through the neighborhood by yourself, you get rolled really quick by like a crackhead. Um, and then there was a change in management, and we couldn't pinpoint like the day the change in management happened, but there was like a distinct change in management. And all of a sudden there's like these big burly guys working the door, and there's lots of motorcycles hanging out around the club. And I think you know where this is going.
Yeah.
So essentially like the story is that the Hells Angels San Francisco chapter bought the bar to use it as a way to wash all their money, because all the bar transactions were cash only.
Wow.
But they needed to like keep the kids coming in, so they like cleaned up the neighborhood and scared off all the crackheads.
Yeah.
So that was always a fun bar to go to. There was the Hemlock, that was a good bar to go to. They had like a little side thing, and I just remember you could like eat peanuts and just throw shit on the floor. They didn't care. It was one of those type of bars.
Yeah.
But going back to what I was saying about man, I got so off topic talking about like just going down memory lanes.
Tangents, that's what we're all about.
I know.
Tangents.
Everyone thinks they're edgy, and everyone tells you like what's so cool about their scene is like how edgy it is.
Right.
And there's I didn't grow up during the 80s punk rock days. You'll hear stories from like Mike Ness where, he was in the 70s and 80s about.
Yeah, for me it was like Suicidal Tendencies, Black Flag, Dead Kennedys.
Those were like the super violent years of punk rock, where it was punk rock fighting punk rock for the sake of like nihilism and just utter violence, just to like get it out of you. And then also everyone else fighting you because you were so different according to, everyone who kind of lived through that. And then the San Francisco scene was just more like, I think that it evolved from that. It got to a point where it's, like we're going to put a scene together and it's going to be very like encompassing and open, and it's going to get really weird. There's a lot of weird bands that came out of San Francisco. And, it just grew from there, and it's become more mainstream and more socially acceptable. And that's kind of where we're at today, where punk is everywhere. Punk is in advertising now. It's
Sure.
in car commercials. It's selling you cell phones and stuff like that. It's in Apple commercials.
That's what's crazy. Like I can remember like one of the first times I heard like Ozzy Osbourne on a commercial, and was just like, oh my God, what have we become?
Well, we became our parents. That's what
Right.
happened. Like the adults who were, working in advertising, they had to retire, and eventually it's our job to fill those positions. And what do you do when you get to those places? You think of like what you're into and what other people
Right.
your age would be into. So now all of a sudden it's not uncommon to hear, heavy metal music or punk rock music in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good point. Is that now the folks our age are selling to our demographic.
Yeah.
And so what speaks to us is the exact same thing that spoke to them, and didn't speak to our parents for sure. So yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a good point.
And that's totally cool. There's people who tell you, that's selling out. I don't think it's selling out. I think it's just if that's your job, that's your job. If your job is to make music and you want to make money off your music, then that's your job. If you want to do this, anarcho crazy lifestyle, then that's cool too. And if you don't want to make money and you want to, live on the street and do it like that, that's cool too. But that's your choice and decision to make. And it's really funny, like thinking about, so I don't know if you ever heard this band. They're called Against Me.
Mm-hmm.
And their big breakthrough album is called Reinventing Axl Rose. And they have a song on there called Baby, I'm an Anarchist.
Okay.
And it's the song where the person who's singing the song it's kind of like a Western love song. I don't know how to describe it. It's really weird. But basically they're saying like, I told you all these things about me. I told you I'm an anarchist. And it turns out that you're just a spineless liberal, where that's a punk rock person saying like, we're kind of on the same spectrum of politics, but I'm like way over here and you're just not quite there.
Mhm.
The things that I have in mind doing, um, it are far different from yours, where it almost makes you far right of my beliefs, where I'd consider you more conservative than me. And when they interviewed the singer of Against Me later on in life and asked her, like, what, how do you feel about this song now? And they're like, man, I was such an idiot.
Right. I feel like that's a super common thing, and I try and keep that in mind when dealing with young people of today, like the whole woke crowd. Right. It's going to be super interesting to see where all the woke folks are in a decade or two.
There's some credence to, I think, this this generation and what they're standing for. I definitely will give them, like, hey, more power to you. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. It As long as it doesn't, hurt me in any way, shape, or form, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you do you, boo boo. Um, I think we're quick to forget, like you said, like who we were when we were younger. I think our parents forgot when they were, maybe protesting wars and spitting on soldiers coming back,
Hmm.
calling people baby killers and things like that. We're really quick to forget our shortcomings a lot of the time. And we're quick to forget or try to put behind us like our cringy behavior per se. And I think that's one of the things about that song is you look back at a song you may have written or a song you may have connected with a long time ago and you're like, oh, that was so cringy.
I,
Like,
I,
makes my skin crawl.
yeah. Yeah. I think when like being young is so much about idealism and the way you think things should be. And while I may not necessarily disagree or may not necessarily agree with some of the messages that are being put out, I think overall that Overton window is moving in a positive direction. Um, whether it just be gay marriage or acceptance of alternative lifestyles or politics or just climate change, what have you. um, Things were vastly different when we were growing up, and in the younger generation, in my experience, are way more open-minded than I recall me and my peers being at that same age. My when my kids were in high school, it's not, and my wife's a high school teacher now. It's not uncommon to see same-sex couples in high school now, and it's perfectly acceptable, for the most part. Whereas if back in the 80s, if you saw that, that was just that's a good way to get yourself beat up after
Oh
school.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, it's I definitely feel like we're moving in a positive direction. Um, but change are always hard. But I think generationally, I mean, we felt the same way about our parents. Like it's always, those damn kids get off my
Oh
lawn.
yeah.
And every generation goes through that.
And we
So
say we're not going to turn into our parents, and then ultimately, the reality is we do.
it's so horrible, man.
It's
Like
it.
like every day there's something new. I'm more and more my dad every single
Oh,
day.
it's truly a daily struggle. Especially when you have a 6-year-old and you're trying to keep them focused on getting things done, and we have a schedule we need to stick to. We got to get to school,
Yeah.
and they're like off in la la land, and you're starting to get to that like snapping point too in your day, and maybe you just didn't have enough coffee, and you're just like you hit that annoyance button in your brain, and suddenly like you are that asshole who was yelling at you as a kid.
Did you have a relationship with your dad?
Yeah. um I wouldn't say it was great. My dad, I would describe him as an asshole. I hate baseball because of him. my dad, um, he had a lot of issues, and he got kicked. He was banned from going to like my little league and soccer games because
He was that
he was
dad.
that dad who would like yell at you from with from where all the other parents were sitting, and so he had gotten banned. Um, so I didn't really have a great introduction to team sports. So again, that's probably why I gravitated to skateboarding,
Mm-hmm.
because it's an individual thing. You can just do it. You don't,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no rules. There's no one saying like you have to do this like that. Um, and he had a lot of anger issues. He had a lot of things that probably um, had gone misdiagnosed throughout his life. I'm not going to say he had an easy life. He definitely didn't. He was a first generation uh, to be raised in the States. He was born in Mexico.
Okay.
His family immigrated here. The second he could start working, he was put to work, and he gave up a lot of his childhood to help pay for his younger siblings to go to private school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's got a lot of baggage, and he was a yeller. When all else failed, like his solution to everything was just like, I'll just yell it out, and that's how I solve all my problems. And uh, there's a time and a place for yelling. There's a time and a place for anger. Uh, something I've always kind of worked with my little dude is I've talked to him like every emotion is okay. Like, I would tell him, you know, it's okay to be sad. I don't think you need to be this sad right now. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of my big things. And I would tell him like, it's okay to be angry. I just don't think you need to be this angry. Uh, you don't need to scream and shout. I think you can be disappointed, but I don't think you need to scream and shout. Whereas my dad would everything is just like scream and shout, scream and shout, scream and shout. And it'd be about weird stuff too. So my relationship, I'd say, with him became more and more fractured over the years. Like I haven't spoken to him in years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a decision that I made for myself, where I just there's a point in my life where I was just like, I'm done. I can't deal with you anymore. I think I've tried my hardest, even as an adult, to be a part of your life and make you a part of my life, and it's just not happening. Like you have your own things going on, you go do you, I will do me. If we send each other a happy birthday card or like a Christmas card, that's cool. But otherwise, I got nothing to say to you. We have very little in common, and the things that we should have in common, they don't exist. So
I think that you definitely sometimes reach a point where you have to dial that stuff way back and set those boundaries. I've always felt like you don't get to pick your family.
oh yeah.
I may love my family because they're my parents or what have you. But I don't necessarily have to like you on a day-to-day basis. And I definitely don't think that there's anything wrong with setting strong boundaries where that's kind of concerned. There's a lot of victim as of playing the victim, seeing yourself as a victim. My parents did this or that to me, or this was my childhood growing up, and I definitely remember reaching a point in probably my maybe late 20s where I was like, okay, this is what my childhood was, but I can't use that as an excuse anymore
Mm-hmm.
because I am an adult now and I need to take responsibility for whatever. um, these were my experiences. It doesn't always have to be that way, and so I can either spend the rest of my life lamenting and woe is me, this is how I was brought up, or I can choose to change that. And talking about it now, I think it was probably around the time that my first daughter was born. And am I going to be the parent that I experienced when I was growing up. And I remember it was a very conscious decision. Like I'm not gonna let that childhood define me
Mhm.
anymore.
I think there's definitely a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of kind of any generational trauma. Like our parents behaved a certain way because their parents behaved a certain way because their parents behaved a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it trickles down to us and all that filters to us. And when you make that conscious decision that you're gonna end the the chain of trauma that's been ongoing generationally, and you take the steps, and it doesn't mean it turns into like a big um hunky dory hugs over everything else.
Sure.
You know I'm the authoritarian in the family. And it sucks. Like, I hate being ward cleaver. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, you're
Um,
right.
but there has to be that person in your child's life that reaffirms to them that there's going to be consequences. I want you to do your best, bud. I really need you to like focus and help out with this thing that we're doing. But if you can't, there's going to be some sort of consequence, whether it's, uh, I got to take your tablet away.
Right.
Sucks, or, we're not going to do story time tonight.
Yeah.
It sucks. It sucks for me too. Like, it's kind of it hurts me.
Sure.
But I think it goes into this realm where we're not telling our kids, like, you know, be a man, don't cry.
Do you think that men are more self-aware now? Like, I feel that men are more self-aware now than we've ever been. I don't feel like my dad became self-aware, but I feel like at a much older age than I did. And I feel like, like my grandparents just didn't have, like, they were so busy surviving. Like, maybe that's it, is that they were so busy surviving, you know, World War II, the Great Depression, Vietnam, things of that nature, that maybe they just didn't have the time and the luxury, air quotes for those of you just listening, the luxury for a lot of self examination and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
a lot of self awareness.
Oh no, we live in a we live in a society. We live in a society where our wants and our desires can be fulfilled instantaneously. You don't have to go to the store. You can look on your little magic computer
And it,
box
and it
that
shows up on your doorstep.
yeah. Like, you don't have to read. I mean, right behind us, we have all these like leather bound books, but you don't have to read any of these books. If you want the information in the book, you just type into your little Palm Pilot and look, and it'll tell you
Sure.
exactly what
Sure.
it is you need to know. There's no need.
Palm Pilot, you just
Yeah.
aged yourself,
I
son.
know, dude.
I'm like, Palm Pilot? Who the fuck uses a Palm Pilot anymore?
Your smartphone. Oh, I mean, I had a BlackBerry too, and but yeah, it's true. We don't have to work as hard as our parents did, and who don't have to work as hard as their parents did, who don't have to work as hard as their parents did. And it's one of those kind of proverbs of the father who went to war so that his son could be a farmer, who farmed so that his son could be a poet. And it's this like ongoing chain where we make this decision where we're gonna do all the hard stuff so that further down our lineage it's not gonna be so hard.
Mhm.
And with that, it gives you time for, once you get from the warrior to the farmer, now to the philosopher who has this time to sit and think about things and really contemplate, some deep existential stuff in their head. Like, are the emotions that I'm using and expressing on a daily basis, are they appropriate? Am I doing it appropriately? What is it that I'm doing? Like, what is the purpose of my existence? What is, at that point, what am I who's working down to me? Like, what's next on on this curve, on this arc of, super hard working to super hard thinking.
Mhm.
Where does that go next? And does the arc go up again? Is it like a big quadratic arc where it's just going to keep going up and down and it's going to go through loops? And where am I in that loop right now? And it's true. I think we have become, as generally everybody, we've become more attuned to our emotions and our reactions to like a lot of different things. And there's a lot of different styles of parenting. I don't know how I describe my parenting style. It's like it's something I always think about. Like, am I parenting right? Am I raising a good human being? Am I gonna raise someone who is gonna do the right thing? And we have me and my son, we have our little like daily affirmations, when walking him into school, and I go, okay, dude, what do you got to do today?
Mhm.
And I got to be a kind person. I have to be a good friend. I have to listen to my teacher. I have to be a good sharer, and I have to help people who are in need. I'm like, we're good. Just, oh, and then have fun on top of it.
Right.
Don't forget the have fun part,
Yeah.
because once you're not having fun, then, forget about it.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got to be nice again.
Jesus,
This
it's
is
so
bullshit.
it's so much easier just to be like curmudgeonly and angry
I
at
mean, they say that ignorance is bliss, and in a lot of ways, it is. Like sometimes I really just wish I could be that, self-centered, not in a conceited way, but self-centered, self-absorbed, person who just doesn't have to have all these uncomfortable like thoughts and dialogues in my head about, what have I done well, what have I not done well, what do I need to change, what do I need to address. It would nice be just to kind of close your eyes and just go like so many
Oh
people,
yeah.
other people seem to do.
Yeah, it's just like you were saying earlier. It's those scary '80s punk rockers who were islands in the stream by themselves,
Yeah,
and there's always been part of the punk rock um, ethos that you make yourself very off-putting to other people because you don't want to deal with them. You're
mm,
so like fed up with how stupid the rest of the world, air quotes for those listening, how stupid the rest of the world is,
yeah,
that you would rather put up these, porcupine barriers
sure,
to make yourself off-putting and visually unpleasant so that other people stay away from you. It's always been a thing. Tattoos are everywhere these days, but I can remember in the '80s, if you saw someone with tattoos, like that was a dangerous person. Only
sure,
like dangerous people and sailors had tattoos.
yeah, yeah,
And it's the same thing with, someone who's rocking a mohawk or they have Liberty spikes or something like that. It means that they're a dangerous person, that they weren't conforming to um the they weren't conforming to what was considered socially appropriate appearance.
I think, growing up, I didn't get my height or my size until I was well into high school. I wore glasses since I was a little kid. I was that little nerd with, stringy blonde hair who got bullied quite a bit. And that was sort of the draw of music for me, of heavy metal music, was a sense of strength, or the illusion of it, because it was just a raw, heavy beat that would give you this feeling of strength that
Oh yeah.
I had never experienced. And and yeah, people, like, you dressed a certain way that was seen as fringe or alternative, and then only your people would deal with you, and those weren't the people who were bullying you or picking on you.
Again, it's tribalism. It's
Yeah,
seeing who's on your team
yeah.
and being able to spot them. It's your team uniform.
And realizing, or that in many ways the best defense was a super aggressive offense.
It, I always ask people this question when it comes to, you're talking about power and heavy metal, hardcore music, stuff like that. Anything that's like super, super heavy. Um, it's powerful. And let me ask you this. So, uh, when you work out, what do you listen to?
Ooh. Actually, when I work out, I usually listen to gangster rap, and probably for the exact same
Reason.
reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a different type of heavy.
just a different type
It's
of heavy. Yeah,
aggressive. It's heavy.
yeah,
It gets you going. It gets you, like it's elevating um your adrenaline a little bit.
mm-hmm.
It's getting you there. And that's you listen to like heavy metal music and you think of, Vikings raiding a village or something like that
Sure.
and drinking blood out of skulls and stuff. Dude. And that's the beauty, again, one of the beauties of music is it there's it'll fulfill an emotion for every single moment of your life.
Yeah.
Because like I guarantee you, like, you're probably not listening to heavy metal or gangster rap all day long. I mean, you could if that's what you're into and that's what makes you happy. But for the most part, you probably restrict it just to like specific parts of your day or
Mm-hmm.
when you're feeling a certain way or when you want to feel a
When you
certain
want to
way.
feel a certain way, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
So what are you listening to these days?
Dude, a little bit of everything. I am an unabashed Swiftie. Taylor Swift.
T-Swift.
I will get down on some Taylor Swift. But I have a super eclectic kind of like my mix. People get in my car and they listen to my mix and they're like, "Are you kidding me right now?" That's like a little bit of everything. Again, Taylor Swift, old NWA, like old gangster rap back in the day. Still hair bands, AC/DC, some country, Chris Stapleton, big Chris Stapleton fan. A lot of worship music now, believe it or not. Yeah, a lot of worship music that speaks to me. Yeah, so it's kind of cool, and yeah, so it's um, uh, an emotion for, or when I want to feel a certain way, then it's like, yeah, we're gonna put on this
Yeah.
this track.
And that's the beauty of music. And there's music like that for everybody. There's people who say that they don't like music or they don't understand music and it's just not for them. And I'll just, I usually just kind of nod my head and go, okay. But I know kind of in the back of my brain, I'm always like, but there's something that makes you feel a certain way when you hear it.
Yeah,
And that's the thing about music.
yeah,
And that's what makes music so great. And that's why I love punk rock music because it reminds me of how young I used to be and how young I want to feel. When I listen to it, I feel young. When I'm listening to it, I'm usually doing something stupid that I shouldn't be doing because I'm too old to be doing that shit anymore. Um, and it's generally on an upbeat. Um, when my son was born, we couldn't do like any of like the Barney music or like any of like the really little kid music. So we came up and we still curate it to this day. He has like his own little Spotify playlist that we just like we add like cool kind of kid friendly punk rock songs
all
to.
right,
Yeah. So he's always grown up with it too, and that's what he knows. And part of me, I have some regrets where I'm like, man, maybe we should have been listening to the Wheels on the Bus more. But I know he gets it at school,
yeah,
and that's cool.
yeah. Do you remember before your son was born? Were you putting thought into what kind of father you wanted to be, what kind of man you wanted to be for him before he was born?
Whatever my dad is or was, opposite.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like I knew when my daughter was born, I was like, I would think, what would my dad do in this situation? And then I would often try and do the opposite. And to be fair, I mean, my dad and I have a good relationship now, but it wasn't ever that we had a poor relationship. But it sounds like you can relate to this being a latchkey kid. There just wasn't time.
Oh, it's like a
You
Cat
know,
Stevens album.
he would come home from work just, you know, tired after a long day of work, and the last thing he wanted to do was have to, you know, deal with his kid. So it wasn't that we had a poor relationship. It was just, it was a very um uh I guess lonely kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's like a Cat Stevens album.
Yeah.
It's literally, or it's whatchamacallit, who sang it? But that song, I'll Be Back Someday, where the dad singing to his son saying like,
Oh,
I can't, yeah,
mm-hmm.
next time when I get
Next
back.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually, the tables turn.
That script gets switched,
Yeah,
right? It's
and you're
like,
hey,
oh,
do you want to hang out?
yep,
I
nope,
can't.
can't, Dad,
I'm
can't,
busy.
Dad, I'm
Like,
busy.
I got the kids. I got this. I got business.
Yeah.
And like I I think that's probably one of my biggest struggles these days is I really said that if my kid asked me to play, I'm gonna dude, I don't care how tired I am. I'm gonna get down on the floor. We're gonna play. We're gonna spend some quality time.
Mhm.
And dude, there's days I'll like maybe I slammed while I was out skateboarding or something, or I'm just like sore, and it's hard for me to get down on the floor. And I never thought I'd be in that position where I'd be like, my body, like I can legitimately like feel getting old. And I'm just like, dude, I'm really tired. I want to, we'll do long stories tonight, or I'll
Yeah.
play with you while you're in the bath or something. And I can see and sense the disappointment. And then that's usually when I take like a deep healing breath, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee. I'm gonna suck it up, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna get down on the floor. We're gonna play some fucking some Legos, and
Yeah.
bust out the stormtroopers. It's we're gonna do this because time's fleeting. Like you're only gonna be that old for so long, and
Right.
one day I'm gonna want to play with you, and you're like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. For me with my dad, it was always time. Like just having a conversation. I can remember, you know, he would come home, he would go in his bedroom, and his nose would be in a book. Like we've always been big readers in our house. And, you know, I would go into the room and sit on the side of the bed and try and like initiate a conversation, you know. So how was your day? You know, and more often than not, I would, you know, what, son? What do you need?
mm,
Oh, you know what? Nothing. I don't need anything.
sorry for yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry for bothering
Yeah.
you, you know? And so I made a very like conscious effort, because I'm the same way, you know. I'd come home from work and, you know, my nose would be in a book. Every time, you know, the kids came up and tried to engage, you know, close the book, put it down, look them in the face, you know, what do you got? Let's have a conversation. And yeah, but it gets tough. I also found like the converse of that was that I started to have much more compassion for my father as I reached those ages that I remember him being.
Mhm.
So as I got to 30, 35, 40, and I was remembering how old I was at those times and how old he was. And I was like, oh, yeah, here I am at, you know, 30 years old, 35 years old. I can barely wipe my own ass. And, you know, he was a single father. Like my parents divorced when I was 3 or 4. So my dad he was 23 when I was born. So he's like 26, 27. This is 1975-ish. And I lived with my dad, which was super unusual for that period of time. There weren't single fathers with 100% custody of their kids. So as I started to reach those ages, I was like, oh, so this is what 30, like when you were a little kid, you know, 25, 30-year-old dad is like an old man.
Oh yeah.
But then as you start reaching those ages and you're like, oh, I'm still just a kid. No wonder he was doing all that fucked up stuff, you know? And then to remember also that he was, you know, less than 10 years out of Vietnam, you know, and dealing with his own emotional struggles around that. So it was just it was very it was enlightening, and it helped me to let go, I think, of a lot of the anger that maybe I was holding towards him.
Hmm.
Um, is now kind of having a more objective view of where I was at in relation to where he was at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you as you mature and get older, you develop more and more critical thinking skills, and eventually, you hope you develop the grace for your parents that you want your kids to have for you. Because man, I've fucked up some shit, dude.
Sure.
And we've all fucked up some shit. We've all, there's things I've missed out on that I wish I hadn't missed out on, whether it's, for work or other reasons. And you just you hope and pray, like, I really hope that we can be friends. I really hope that we grow up together, and I really hope that you'll realize that your old man is imperfect and a fuck up and a shithead at sometimes. And but at the end of the day, they always had like your best interest at heart.
Yeah, and I think my kids probably give me way more grace than I give myself at this point. Like yeah, I did the best I could. I definitely had their best interests at heart, but those mistakes, as numerous as they were, they definitely stick with me anyway. And those are the things that I think about, like in the middle of the night. Like, you never think about, like, oh yeah, I was a great dad and I did this and I did that. And it's always, for me, it's always those regrets that come back and haunt you at like 2 a.m. Like, oh, why did I do this when they were 5? I shouldn't have done
Yeah.
that, you know?
I shouldn't have yelled at him like that.
Right.
That wasn't cool. Yeah. That you can't take those back. It is, once it's done, it's done. It's written and it's gone. But you can work, even if it's just like a little bit, to try to avoid that in some way, shape, or form. You know, when my little dude gets, like, for lack of a better term, when he gets super emotional, I always go and tell him, like, I don't think you need to be this sad right now. Let's count to 10, and counting to 10 is good for both of us. It's
Right.
oh yeah, no, I'm like, okay, this is
Yeah.
me. I'm saying you should count to 10, but really
Yeah.
I'm counting the
Yeah.
10, and so we do our slow countdown to 10.
That was not me as a dad. It was like, I'm gonna count to right now.
Oh man,
You're gonna get the count of 1, and
No,
and then it's on.
my wife knows I've hit my breaking point when I go, I'm only going to ask you nice one more time.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that too. So because it's happened enough where he knows that once I say that, the next time I have to tell him to do something, it's not going to be nice. I'm not going to be
Mhm.
so kind about it. And he generally reacts and gets done whatever it is that I'm asking him to get done. But just like the look on my wife's face when I say that, it's always a reminder. I'm like, man, am I really an asshole?
Yeah.
I think I am. Like, if when I say this and he knows what's about to happen and she knows what's about to happen, does that make me an asshole?
I would say my opinion is no. Being a boy, I mean, we've both been boys. I think we both realize that sometimes it takes a little more to get our attention. And a lot of times, like, if I had to raise my voice, it wasn't necessarily because I was angry. It was that sometimes kids just can't focus, and it's chaos, and you need to get that attention. You need to snap them back into the here and now. And I don't know, maybe that's just a rationalization on my part, but
It is what it is. Um, but it's better than, what like my dad did, come up and flick you in the back of the ear or like
Mm,
poke you in the chest and, you know, refocused you or give you a slap on the back of the head.
mhm.
But he probably did that because that's what his dad did to him or
Yeah, I think that I hope anyway that we all do the best we can with the tools that we have at the time, right? Hopefully at 52, I have more tools in my toolbox than I had when I was 32 or 22. I don't know that people are generally intentionally assholes, right? It's just that you just don't have those are the tools that you have.
yeah.
You have those asshole tools.
Yeah, and there's a place for an asshole. There's a time and a place for it.
Sure.
Um, you, I just think that when it comes to raising children, especially small children, because they're so like aware and absorbing everything that's going on around them, that it's super important that you they're gonna have plenty of time for the reality of life later in life.
Sure.
Right now, just be a kid, just enjoy it. It goes back to that whole like warrior farmer poet thing, you know. Uh, I'm at wherever I am in the arc, so that your life can be easier. Enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
go play. There's gonna be times I'm gonna have to like correct your behavior. It is what it is. You're probably not gonna like it when we get to that point, but it's for your own benefits, for your own good. And again, I hate fucking word cleaver, but you have to be that guy. I mean, it's funny like
Somebody's got to be responsible.
uh, yeah, but when you look at like TV dads, like I really didn't watch a whole lot of Leave It to Beaver. It's just like Ward Cleaver's like the quintessential mid-century dad who
Yeah.
had his pipe in his study and you know uh talked to the beav about well, Beaver, you had this problem. um I grew up in the Homer Simpson, Al Bundy
See,
dad period. But dude, Homer was such a good dad. He's still such a good dad. He is an idiot. He's a dipshit, but his intentions are always for the benefit of his family.
right. I have a lot of heartache about that though. Like I'm not. I have difficulty pinpointing exactly when TV dads went from Ward Cleaver to Homer Simpson. Like
Let's talk about
when did we start being portrayed as just goofs who had little to no value in the family, who were just there for comedic relief.
it's cultural, it's generational. It goes like, you look at 80s sitcom dads getting into like the 90s, mid 90s, and the world's changing more and more. And I would have to say like quintessentially the most standout dad behind Homer Simpson is it's Al Bundy. He's this blue collar, hardworking dad
Mm-hmm.
who, yeah, he talked a lot of shit and quote unquote, he hated his family.
Mm,
He didn't, because again, at the end of the day, he never left. Sure he could have wandered away plenty of times. He never did that.
sure.
He stayed true to his family. He defended his family. Dude, there's so many episodes where the arc was, his daughter Kelly would be in some sort of negative relationship with someone, and Al would solve it by like knocking the shit out of the
Sure.
guy. Yeah, just like clock him in the mouth,
Right.
and and that made him the hero. And it's the same. Anyone disrespected his wife, he talks a lot of shit about his wife. He would clean their clock. That's what
Mhm.
he did. He was always protecting the family. I think he was in a middle of time where our portrayal of archetypical dads was changing more and more. Um, I think like the next big major dad is probably going to be like um, the dad from Modern Family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what's even funnier is the
Yeah.
fact that Ed O'Neill's on
They're
that
still the
show
same
too.
guy.
Yeah, but I don't know. what it was or when it was that suddenly like dad went from being, Ward Cleaver into dad being Homer Simpson.
Yeah, from being the head of the household to uh
The guy with wild ideas of
yeah, to just being a second class citizen almost, I hope we come back. I hope we come back around to that.
I think we have. I think like again, like you watch a show like Modern Family, and again it's this very like pristine look at a very interesting nuclear family. You have Phil, the true nuclear dad in the thing, and he's a total goof. He's like off, you know, learning magic and how to like walk across a tightrope. He is such a goof,
Yeah,
but his heart is always like there for his family, and he's
yeah,
always trying to be like the new modern dad. And then his wife's dad, who's played by Ed O'Neill,
mm-hmm,
so Al Bundy himself, is he's like the rough around the edges dad, who's like when it's time to hit someone, he's just gonna punch him, or
yeah,
he's gonna ask him politely to leave first, and then go right into violence. Is like, okay, that's my next move. Um, and you see how they like interact with each other, and I think there's this good balance where they both teach each other these important lessons about um, being a dad, and the overall like um, the this image of masculinity that we associate with being a dad. And they both have these great features in their personalities when it comes to their masculinity, where Ed O'Neill's character is like hyper masculine. He's that guy. And then you have the character of Phil, who's not as masculine, but he's like a man's man. Just a like a weirdo, goofball type of man's
mm-hmm.
man. He's into magic and power walking and weird stuff like that, or what we would consider weird, or at least I consider it weird. I don't know. I'm not much of a power walker, um, but neither of them are wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting how the I guess the definition of what it means to be a man changes, and it's interesting. We can never just like as we find a new balance. There always just seems to be like these extreme pendulum swings.
Oh yeah,
We go from Ward Cleaver to Homer Simpson, which you can argue are very different ends of a spectrum, and then we kind of seem to eventually reach the middle. It would be nice if we could just if it was much more linear, where you just kind of we would just change over time without these big emotion.
yeah, but it's just like a good reflection of like uh our overall progress. Where Ward Cleaver was the single earner in the family. I don't think the wife worked in the
Mm-hmm.
series.
Right,
Um, so it was his job to be the head of household.
right.
Um, I think the things that don't get mentioned is in that kind of nuclear family setting for that particular period is that essentially the husband was supposed to be like the head of household, but the wife was the house manager and really like the brains behind the power
Mm-hmm.
sort of deal. And then we see ourselves getting um into Married with Children or into The Simpsons, where there's a lot of equity between the two, um, where you have these two different people. You have the Peg and Al, and their balance is of power in the household. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it. It's dependent on each other. They
Mm-hmm.
really do need each other. It's a different power balance because Peg Bundy isn't managing the house. She's just sitting there all day watching
Smoking cigarettes.
yeah, and watching soap operas.
Yeah.
But she brings this. She brings something to the house that offsets Al. It's the same thing with Marge, where Marge is you know, she's the yin to Homer's yang, and basically all of his craziness is balanced out um, by her balancedness, where
Right.
she's not like insane
Hmm.
or you know stupid the way that that Homer's portrayed. And I think you know we totally skip like the '70s. We totally skip the Brady Bunch. You know,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
there's so
Right.
many different places to go when it comes to these issues of you know dads in the household. But at the end of the day, um, like I like to think like dad is not. It's anyone can be a father. Not everyone's a dad.
Hmm.
And to be a dad is it's a state of mind. It's yeah, you're accepting this role. You know, you're fun loving, you are the encourager, you're the safety net, you're the protector, you're all these different things. You're also, unfortunately, from time to time, you have to be fucking word cleaver and, you know, sit the beef down.
The hammer.
Yeah, you have to be the hammer. And hopefully you know, you're not so much the belt either. Like you you've established a relationship with your kids that's strong enough where they do listen to you and whatever issues they're having, they're willing to talk to you about it and not live like their secretive life. I, I had my secretive life. I know my son's gonna have a secretive life.
Sure.
Um, I just hope that my son is as open to talking to me as I was to my mom about, you know, the crazy shit I was up to and doing.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's all you can do. You just,
Yeah, that's always the relationship that I wanted to have with my kids because they, you know, again, I think one of my strengths is being able to remember back to those times and knowing that my kids are going to have lives outside of the house that I know absolutely nothing about and that I'll know absolutely nothing about ever. And so it was very important to me to number one have a good relationship with them, and number two to give them the tools and the confidence to be able to navigate those difficulties that I wasn't going to be there to be able to help them with. And it's super cool when your kids are adults and you're gonna learn this and that you move from kind of that parent child relationship to one of peers and friendship and your kids start to have opinions of their own and you see them start to make decisions and they're able to justify their decisions based on their own experiences and now they have, you know, opinions on politics, opinions on gender, opinions on work, opinions on what it means to be, you know, an adult or a woman or what have you. And you start to be able to have those adult conversations with them. And that's at least, if not more rewarding than that parent child relationship. It's super cool.
I'm gonna cherish the years up until that point. I, because that just means I'm getting older and older.
Sure.
And it's not that I don't look forward to getting older. I think it's like my body doesn't look forward to getting like feel like the feeling of like hurt, like your lower back hurting and your knees hurting.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and you sleep wrong and suddenly like your whole day is ruined.
Yeah.
That's something that's new to me now, and and I'm trying my best not to let that get to me so much. And I think that's why like um, it's been so important for me to go out and do like things that remind me that I'm still like able to go do the things that I enjoyed doing the most growing up. And that's the thing that I love so much about skateboarding right now. Again, it's all interconnected, skateboarding and punk rock. Um, but just being able just to go like push my board around the park, It's beautiful. I love it. I'm not breaking my neck or anything like that.
Sure.
Every now and then I get a little brave and I try something that's, you know, um, maybe a little out of my comfort zone, but
Yeah.
that's part of it too. Is
And then you're like paying for it for the next week, right?
yeah, it's okay. I'll drink a couple beers and you'll be fine.
Right.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
But leading by example for your kids and encouraging them to like try things that are out of their comfort zone and showing them that, it's one of the great lessons of skateboarding is you're gonna eat shit at some point during this whole fun thing. You're gonna eat shit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how bad you eat shit is gonna be uh kind of up in the air. You might just slam and land on your side. You might get the wind knocked out of you. You might roll your ankle. You might break your femur. There's no guarantees.
Mhm.
It's whatever it is. It's whatever it is. You might get a compound fracture in your arm.
But how are you going to deal with that adversity going forward? And
Well,
and is that going to prevent you from doing what you
Well,
love in the future?
Are you going to be afraid of what could happen,
Right.
or are you just going to go for it?
Yeah.
Because anything bad could happen to you at any time. That the fan up there that could like fall and crash on us.
Mm.
The floor could give out. That doesn't mean we're gonna we're not gonna sit here and have this conversation because we're terrified of something that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
It could definitely happen, and one day this floor is gonna collapse. There's no way to say that it's not gonna happen.
I think that's what I'm seeing more and more in young people these days. Whereas in my generation and my generations before me, for sure, it was about doing the responsible thing as an adult, and and being like, I remember, like, I had very concrete goals very early in life because I was like, my dad was my hero, right? And so I had to at least accomplish what he had accomplished by the ages that he had accomplished these things, So by 22, I was into my career. By 23, I'd bought my first house. By 24, I was married. I wanted to start having kids by the time I was 25. I had my first daughter was born when I was 28. So it was very important to be an adult, a responsible adult early. And what I see when young people now is following their dreams much more, not being overly concerned with growing up so fast. Following their dreams, not being afraid of doing what they love and not letting that stop them. Which is super cool to see. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
kind of like, oh, you got to get out and get a job, and you got to do,
Well-
why? Just because that's what I did.
Failure is inevitable. That's again, it's one of those lessons. Like I was saying, like with skateboarding, you're gonna fall. Something bad is gonna happen. The level of bad, who knows?
Sure.
The true lessons that you learn is how do you react to your failure and what do you do to overcome it. And the thing about skateboarding is you'll watch people try the same trick over and over and over and over, and they might get it, but it's not perfect. So I've watched people have complete breakdowns in their frustration over them and this little children's toy
Mm-hmm.
and a concrete ledge. And it's a very human thing, and it's probably one of the most human things, just this frustration and trying to conquer this thing. There's no Super Bowl. You don't get a trophy or anything. You don't get you might have a couple people see it. Nowadays you can post it instantly to the internet and everyone will give you like a little heart and tell you great job, congratulations. But it really doesn't mean anything to anyone other than yourself. And these little wars that we put ourselves into and how we react to them, and our failure getting to our ultimate goal and victory in these things versus the variables you can't control. And are you going to fall? What are the conditions that you're trying to accomplish this thing in? Um, when you fall, like, how bad's the injury? Are you going to get back up? Are there people watching? Who's watching you? Are you by yourself? Yada, yada, yada. And those are some of the important lessons from skateboarding is acknowledge the fact that you're going to eat shit. Acknowledge it and figure out what type of person you are. Are you going to like eat shit and then you're just going to be done? I'm done. I'm afraid I'm never doing that ever again. Are you going to live and empower fear into your life and prevent you from doing something really amazing, possibly? And granted, you might be the only person who appreciates it, but again, it's this perfect thing that you get to do. And are you going to let this issue of fear be the difference between you accomplishing a goal and not? And you can tell when someone has absolutely accomplished something in skateboarding or they've overcome like their fear. And usually the big fear for people in skateboarding is dropping in. And that's scary for everyone. It's you're trusting gravity, a little bit of science and physics, a little bit of pixie dust that you're gonna do this thing that theoretically like shouldn't be possible, where you're gonna stand on the edge of a cliff and you're gonna force a piece of wood to go straight down and your body's gonna stay with it and you're gonna follow it down and land in this little like curvature, and that's gonna propel you forward. And you're just crossing your fingers and hoping it's going to work the way it should work. Someone, is going to explain it to you. Failure on a drop in is like, that's breaking a hip, dislocating a shoulder, losing some teeth maybe.
Yeah.
And when you start to put the consequences on the line to people, that's where they start to like doubt themselves. It's the same thing in life. When you start telling people the consequences for falling short on something, they start to question like, ooh, is that what I really want to do? Maybe not. The consequences of investing into buying your first house and like everything that could go wrong buying a house. Do you really want to do that right now? Do you want to buy this one? I don't really know if that's what I want to do. But, once you tell someone that as long as you fully commit to doing this crazy act, it'll work. Trust me. And that's one of the things about being a dad is you or just a parent in general, you've already gone through the craziness. You've already taken your slams. You've had your licks. You found your flow. You have it going for you. You know your limitations. You know what you can and can't do. Every now and then you get a little, spicy and you drink an extra cup of coffee or have an extra bang in the morning and you're good and you can do a little bit more, but you understand the risks involved in things and you encourage your kids to take these risks, and there's going to be some calculation to it. And sometimes it's just going to be like, dude, just take a deep healing breath and just fully commit. And as long as you do that, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Whatever the outcome is, like, you'll be fine. You're going to learn a lesson one way or another. You're either going to realize that this is super easy, you can just do this, or you just need to work on it some more. And, maybe we have to go see the dentist afterwards. It's okay.
Yeah. Do you think there's a lack of resilience now among just people in general?
No.
No.
I don't think there is. As long as you're teaching people at an early age that falling doesn't hurt, I think for the most part, I've seen some little kids take some serious slams and they just get back up and like it's no big deal. You do your part as a parent, like you give them a helmet, and you give them the knee pads and the wrist guards and the elbow pads and everything else, and it takes a little bit of the sting off. And but eventually there's a way like you learn to fail correctly in skateboarding, so that when you do hit those hard times, you're struggling to accomplish something, how to fall correctly. So it's not going to be great, but it's not going to be bad either. And sometimes falling is more fun than actually like getting it right. Sometimes it's a spectacular failure and you get more out of the failure than you actually do from accomplishing something in the first place. You learn way more about yourself in it.
Right. Either we win or we learn, right?
So, even when we lose, we win.
Right.
That's that's the whole thing.
Sure.
And you can equate that to pretty much anything. Um, and again, that's just one of those like beauties of skateboarding, like how it transcends itself, and you get into like this weird spiritual ishness of pushing around a kid's wooden toy
Right.
and a couple of urethane wheels, and hope to God it can defy physics and
Yeah.
gravity for you.
Yeah. You reach a very Zen sort of philosophical
Oh yeah,
learning life lessons on four wheels,
on a
right?
on a kid's toy, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just the thing about skateboarding, and until you've done it, like you'll never understand or appreciate it until you've taken the risk. You know, life's a risk car now.
Right. Yeah. 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 For
Dude,
sure.
you walk out that door, you can get hit by a car. Dude, you get a dog can come out of nowhere and bite you in the leg, and you know rip a tendon or a major artery or something. You don't know.
Right.
But you have to just be willing to take that risk every day just to step out the door, and more likely it's not going to happen, but you made the first step out the door. Now what's going to happen? What's next in your day? What other risks are you going to take?
Mhm.
And what's the benefit of the risks that you're going to take? There's some things in skateboarding where it's just like, that's just stupid. Like, why would you try that? Like, that's dumb. It's not going to work, and people will still try it just to say that they did it or they tried it, and sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't. And it's the same thing with life in general. There's stuff that people do, and it's just like, dude, that is dumb. There's no benefit to that whatsoever. There's nothing you're going to get out of it. And some people walk away from those self-destructive behaviors unscathed, and some people don't. And you're just crossing your fingers that your kids, that if they do choose to do anything like that, that they walk away from it unscathed. It's just a phase, and they're done. That's it.
Yeah.
Never again.
Yeah.
They learned the first time.
So tell me about the Punk is Dad podcast.
So I got into podcasting because I was invited on another person's podcast to talk about beer. And the way that, I don't know if you know him, Brian Richardson.
He's actually supposed to be here Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think he's going to be here. Yeah.
So Brian and I became like instantaneous buddies after I commented on, he was wearing a pair of Vans Jeff Rowley shoes. And I was like, oh, you got Jeff Rowley's. And he was like, you knew what those were instantaneously. Yeah. And I knew we had a connection.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly. I know you're part of my tribe. So I came on his podcast to talk about punk rock stuff and drinking beer. And I was like, I could do that too. I love talking. I'm a pretty social person.
See, I think people would not know that about you, because you and I worked together for a few years, and talkative is not an adjective that I would use to describe you.
I am a talker when it comes to, like, I can talk day and night about punk. I can talk day and night about skateboarding. I can talk day and night about parenting, politics, beer, and touchy-feely emotional stuff, and movies too. I can talk, and Star Wars. Yeah, I guess that falls under.
That's kind of touchy-feely.
Yeah,
emotional
it is.
stuff.
Yeah. There's a whole story arc in there too.
Sure.
So I took my shot at it, and I came up with my concept, and I was like, well, what's the niche that I can fill that's going to cover everything that I want to do and talk about, and then can also be like a cathartic release for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I need to talk to other people about parenting,
Mm-hmm.
because if I'm not, then I'm missing out. I'm missing out on other people's opinions. I can hear what they think about mine. And I think there's so many people in the punk rock and skateboarding community that we are growing older, and we realize that, our dads weren't always there for us. The people that we needed in our corner weren't there. And so now we're in a position where, like, we can change this. We can do the punk rock thing, which is to, okay, you have this failure in front of you. What do you do to fix it? And it's be there for our kids and be like an active part of their life and do all those things. And that's what I want to do. And there's a lot of stuff that I've covered on the show where it's, we're talking about like who's your kid's hero and the importance of being a hero in your kid's life.
Mhm.
And then there's some dark stuff like my darkest episode was my Christmas episode, because it was more about me talking about my my personality failures dealing with anger management.
Oh, was that the anger one that
Yeah.
I was just listening to it the other day, and I actually wanted to talk to you about that. I thought that was like super
That
informative and super, like, you definitely got below the surface on
like
that one.
I got so much feedback about that episode. People were like, that was dark, that was raw. My sister was like texting me. She's like, if you ever need to talk, we can talk anytime. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, that's
hey,
the
you're
point.
not like giving away all your shit. And
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. This is a cathartic moment. I was connecting with a fictional character who was also frustrated and angry and was hitting a boiling point. And there's a lot of emotions that happen during the holiday season. And I was like, that's what I'm going to talk about. We're going to deep dive into the ugly side of Christmas, which is anger and frustration and anxiety and how that all builds up.
yeah.
But ultimately, it's less about Christmas and more about me and my own anxiety and anger issues. And, the very last part of the episode, I played that great speech that Chevy Chase's Clark Griswold's dad gives to him about, Christmas and how magical it is and how important it is to be a part of the magic. Don't be the problem in Christmas. Be the magic, and drink a lot of Jack Daniels. It helps too.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was me acknowledging my shortcomings and failings as an adult and as a father, and at the same time, it was me opening a door so that other people could talk about it too. Because sometimes it's just you just need to see like it's okay for one person to say something, and then you can jump in too.
Sometimes all it takes is just for somebody to crack that door.
Yeah,
and
you just crack that first beer, and then all of a sudden
right?
you're down to the 12.
And to let you know that it's okay to talk about these things. Where have you explored at all, like where your anger comes from?
I think a lot of it, again, it's a lot of it's generational trauma. I was taught at an early age from watching my dad do it that anger was the most appropriate and best way to solve a lot of issues and problems. And that's why I've spent so much time dealing with trying to not be angry in front of my son, or not be angry
In an inappropriate way.
inappropriately. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Because he's 6, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. There's when you're that young, you're a little.
You're just all raw emotion at that point.
you're basically like a little crazy person who you're lucky if you wipe your own ass correctly.
Yeah.
And
I'm 52. I can barely wipe my own ass correctly. So
And so it's not fair to him if I can't compose myself. I can't have any expectation that a 6-year-old can compose themselves and can control their emotions, especially when you can as, a 39-year-old adult.
sure.
So, again, that goes back to like, let's count to 10. You'll calm down. I calm down. Again, it's an exercise for both of us. It's talking about it. It's realizing where my anger comes from and why I behave the way I do. And then at the same time, it's also making sure that I'm doing things for my own mental and physical health so that I can alleviate that angry feeling. So again, that's where like working out and getting into skateboarding are so important in my journey. Because let me tell you, like, skateboarding, you'll get angry, you'll get frustrated, but the serotonin that drops in your body as you're like accomplishing things or doing things and you're having fun doing it.
Sure.
There's no other feeling like it. It's great. It's the same thing like when you're lifting weights or something, you're hitting, PRs and stuff, or you're able to do something that maybe you never thought you would be able to do um physically, and suddenly like the serotonin again, it's just pure,
Yeah.
and it feels great, and then the rest of your day is great and everything is awesome, and that's all you can do.
Yeah. As kind of explored my own anger throughout my life, I've kind of figured that mine is very closely connected to fear. Um, whether it's fear of doing the wrong thing, fear of looking stupid, fear of getting hurt, fear of whatever. I find that my anger is more of like a fight or flight
It's yeah, it's anxiety based.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to do something that like scares you every single day. Like skateboarding, especially when you're skating pools and you're getting high up on the wall, you're getting up to coping, you're feeling your wheel go over the coping and lock in, and you hear that really like just reassuring scrape sound that happens. And then you realize like how far down the ground is and how close you really are to like truly dying or getting seriously injured. And that's the adrenaline rush that like you're just chasing at that point. It's not the serotonin, it's the adrenaline at that point. And you can, if you never put yourself in a position to do it, you'll never understand if you don't put yourself in a position to fail, you'll never know if you could do it to begin with.
Yeah.
And that will drive you batty. And I've had that anxiety before too, where I will not do something because I'm so terrified of the consequences. And that gives me anxiety. And then I'll go home and will be in such a bad mood because I'll say, I could have done it. I
Mm.
I could have done this thing. Why didn't I do it? I could just do it. Why didn't I do it? It's so much easier. And then you start to see your like you start to picture in your head yourself doing it, and then you're getting even more and more frustrated and stuff. And that's the thing about fear. Fear is a son of a bitch. Fear can debilitate you. You could be the strongest, hardest working, most proficient person, and the second fear comes into your life and you allow it to take control, that's a son of a bitch. That'll put you in bed for a week.
Mm-hmm.
It'll ruin your day. It'll take all the flavor out of your food. It'll just destroy you. And that's why it's so imperative that, again, like even as an adult, you still put yourself in positions where you're going to do something scary. You're going to put yourself out there and do something that's out of the norm and out of your everyday comfort zone, so that you can remind your body that I can still learn things, I can still do things. I'm still a fucking stud, you know. Um I'm not old, I'm not debilitated. I can do all of these things. I still have it in me. And I'm going to fail along the way a little bit. There's going to be some falls. Hope you can laugh it off. That's the best way to do it. And you show your kids that it's okay to fail, it's okay to try new things, it's okay to laugh at falling. It can be funny. Um, Turn your failures into learning experiences and make it a positive um, moment in your life. But otherwise, like if you let fear rule you, then you'll just stay indoors.
It's incredible how powerful fear is, right up to the point that you act. Like fear is just it's all in your head. Like it feels like fear is like this concrete physical thing, and it's just all in your head until you take that first step. And then it seems to evaporate,
Oh,
and you realize that, okay, yeah, maybe I'm gonna get hurt, but that's not something to be afraid of.
fear is this huge looming robot that's covered in spikes and has freaking missiles shooting out of its eyeballs and sharp claws and things like that. But then once you get inside of fear, you'll realize it's this really tiny little scared, entity. It's a nothing burger. Like, yeah, fear is a son of a bitch, but fear is also a little bitch too.
And then yeah, right. And then I get so pissed after the fact that I just wasted all this time
How much energy?
being scared, being afraid. How much energy did I expend?
Oh, yeah.
How much anxiety? How much time did I spend in bed? How much time did I just, energy expend just worrying? And like I said, it turned out to just be a little bitch. It turned out to be a nothing burger. It was.
Oh yeah, that's the
And
thing
you're
about.
like, God damn it!
But see, that's why it's so important that we teach our kids it's okay to do scary stuff. In fact, you have to do scary stuff. If you're not doing stuff that scares you just a little bit, you'll never understand how much possibility the world really has for you. And it goes back to like our parents letting us just like run wild and free and like, okay, be home before the streetlights turn on.
Right.
And that's, dude, we have so much more communication now. Like, if my mom needed to have gotten a hold of me back then, she'd be shit out of luck. It didn't happen today.
Yeah.
Like,
not that they were really trying to find us.
Oh, I know.
He'll be back sometime.
yeah, eventually they'll come back.
Yeah. They'll get hungry or something.
Yeah,
Need some food. They'll come back.
They have to eat. They always eat, right? Just don't get them wet and don't feed them after midnight.
Yeah,
right?
don't feed them after midnight. Yeah.
But would I let my son take the same risks that I was taking as a kid? No, because it's super scary. That's like anxiety dropping scariness.
Yeah.
Imagine letting your kid run around a big city with like $20 and a skateboard.
Well, now, I mean, kids disappear doing that shit.
Kids are disappearing.
Kids are getting snatched out of the Target from like one row over. And
is it that there's more kids that are getting snatched up, or is it that we're so much more interconnected that something that's happening like a million miles away seems that much closer?
I definitely, that's a super good question. And I ask myself that all the time because, social media and technology makes the world seem very, very small.
Oh yeah, it's just next door.
Whereas when I was growing up, something happened over on the East Coast. Maybe it was a week or 2 weeks before it made the news. Probably you never even heard about it.
Oh yeah.
But now, hey, there was a traffic accident at the corner of Stop and Don't Stop over in, Greensboro, North Carolina. 2 seconds later, we know about it all the way across the country, and it makes the world seem super small. So yeah, that kind of begs the question: is there more crazy, aberrant behavior going on, or are we just more aware of it now?
It's probably both.
Yeah,
it's probably both. I mean, the way the world is, like how crazy people are. All because of the internet. I think the internet has to do a lot with our like influx of kind of like crazy behavior and how we share these stories with each other, and how it's always been if it bleeds it leads. And that's what you're always going to get in your this news feed that's determined by this computer program that figures out like what you look at the most. And when all you're looking is, blood and guts and kidnappings, then that's all you're going to see in your news feed. And that's all you're ever going to know about that's going on in the world.
Technology is very much a double-edged sword. Super great, super interconnected, more connected with people than ever before, while at the same time being like lonelier and more disconnected than ever before.
Oh yeah, it's insane. The fact that you can have in your pocket, you have all of the known history of the universe.
And anything you ever want to know that humans know is right there. Is right there in your pocket. I remember, when I was a kid, I could have like 100 phone numbers in my head. Hey, what's Jimmy's phone number?
Yeah,
what's such phone number? Now I barely know my wife's phone number. I don't know my kid's phone number. I have no idea. I got to look it up. Yeah, it's very disconcerting. We don't have to retain any information anymore because it's
No,
all right at our
it's
fingertips.
it's all right there for you. It's all perfectly curated. Whatever it is that you're gonna need to know,
Right,
it's already it knows it
right.
before you do.
And whatever your opinion is, you can find something curated precisely for your opinion.
Yep.
So so if you don't have a very open mind, it's like just tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what I want to hear.
So I saw that you read an article about a child kidnapping from a Target. I have 3 other articles about children being
Right.
kidnapped from Sears, Kmart. Oh, see, now I'm aging myself. Like
Right.
stores that don't even exist. From yeah, man. I I think our society started to fall the most when the malls started closing. I think the malls were kind of one of those last bastions where people would meet in mass and socialize. Just being around other people, you know.
Yeah.
You have to actually physically go talk to someone if you want to purchase something.
Yeah.
You, I think that's a big part of it.
I think I got my first cell phone in 2001, 2002, early 2000s right there. And I fought it. I fought it tooth and nail. I was like, it's just a nag device. I don't want people to be able to get a hold of me. It was just, and now if you took my phone away, it would, because it's not just a phone anymore. I mean, it's like, it's your entire, it's your entire network. I've had the exact same cell phone number for like 20 years now. I almost wonder if there's going to reach a point where like at birth, you know, where you've got your social security number, if now they're going to issue you like a phone number, and your phone number is just going to follow you from birth until death.
Oh man, you just gave Elon Musk a new idea.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's a permanent phone number for every single person. It'll be the same phone number the whole rest of your life.
yeah.
That's probably a thing. That is legitimately probably a thing. And to show like the importance of my phone, I just bought a computer for the first time in God knows how many years.
Really?
Yeah. Because my cell phone has always been my computer. It's always fulfilled all of like my computer needs.
Well, they're more powerful than any of the computers I had when, you know, back in the day. I mean, I remember when I bought my wife a computer, and it was like, it had 512 megabytes of RAM or something, and it was like the high end. You know, now you can't even print out a picture of 512 megabytes of RAM. It's a joke, man. So high school in San Francisco.
It was good. Went to your everyday suburban high school. It was exactly like what I imagined high school was going to be like. There was the
High school back then was like very cliche, right? I mean,
it was
from
like
all the movies. Yeah,
legitimately, like I remember people having Letterman jackets and stuff like that, and the cheerleaders would like have their cheerleading uniforms on, and you could like determine like it was like West Side Story, like the Sharks and the Jets. Like everyone had like their little, their hood in the. I forgot what the hell they called it, like the big open.
Oh, the quad.
The
yeah,
quad,
everybody had their own little spots in the quad.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
They like this
The jocks were over here with the cheerleaders, and the stoners were over here, and the punks were over here, and
and it was fun, and probably those the most prolific moments in my life were definitely in high school. I had some really, really great teachers during high school, who both still work at my high school. One of my English teachers, her name's Annette Kesterson. She opened my eyes to just reading different books. We had a book report that we had to do, and I wanted to do, because I was so cool and edgy, I wanted to do Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And she's like, nope, can't do it. And I said, then I don't know what I'm going to read. She's like, read this. And she gave me a book, and it's called Weetsy Bat. It was not what I was expecting, but it was so fucking good to like this day.
Wheatsy bat?
Yeah, WEETI ZIE bat, BAT. Wheatsy bat, something along those lines. And it was such a good kind of punk rock piece of work that like the story is really good, the pacing is really incredible. It's a very like modern fairy tale type of feel to it.
Give us a summary of the storyline real quick.
Oh my gosh. So Weetzie Bat is our protagonist. She's like a young adult who lives in a very magical, like Hollywood type of land. It's like modern LA. And she falls in love with this rock star guy, and they have their trials and tribulations all throughout this. Like, it's like if Disney wrote like a very like gritty Hollywood love story.
Okay.
But it definitely gets really interesting at some points. There's like a threesome in it at one point. It's really like, it's a really weird book.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure if it was a book that she recommended today, like it just like
she'd be fired.
Yeah, some person's parent would flip the fuck out.
Yeah.
And it would be a whole thing.
Yeah.
I had another teacher, his name's Scott Schneider, and he was, I guess, like the cool hip English teacher who was way into like slam poetry. He was like, he was a true beatnik when it comes down to it. He was like a dying breed of like postmodern beatnik kind of guy. He was definitely like listened to a lot of jazz in his own time, and he was way into poetry, and he was such a snarky asshole. But he was like the good kind of snarky asshole.
Yeah.
Like he was like funny, and he was so like sharp, and his wit was like unboundable. So he always had something to say back. So
cool.
no one really ever messed with him. And I was like, man, it must be really cool to be that smart. I want to be that smart.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't matter what anyone says, you just like and eviscerate them.
It's interesting who our heroes turn out to be. You know, the folks that have influence on your life that you remember just decades later. It's cool. It's cool.
No, it's really cool, and like I'm glad that they're still there, and I'm glad they still have influence over so many other young minds, and they can hopefully help them see what I saw too.
Did you go to your 20-year high school reunion?
No, fuck no.
No?
I went to my pussy. I went to my 10-year, and that's all I needed.
Yeah, I was the opposite. I didn't go to my 10-year because I thought I hated everybody. But then I went to my 20. Very surreal.
Oh yeah.
Very surreal experience. Yeah, very surreal experience. Like just the guys who were, jocks in school are now, PE teachers, and just, all not all, but the cheerleader girls are definitely not that anymore. Yeah. And it's just the to see the changes that people made for the good and the not so good. It was just, it was a very surreal experience being able to remember back then and my opinions or observations of them at 16, 17 years old versus the people that we all turned out to be at 38 was, it was a trip. Plus I got super fucking drunk. And passed out in my car. So.
I remember going to my 10-year, and it was fun, and it was cool to see people.
Did people really change that much after 10 years? Like 18 to 28, I don't know that there's like a whole lot of...
I don't think there's a whole lot of change in a whole lot of people. A lot of them still, the people who we knew were going to become, finance bros, became finance bros. The ones that were going to go on to, Ivy League schools went on to Ivy League schools,
Mm.
and everyone else just kind of did their own thing. And
Did you go on to an Ivy League school?
I did not. I did go to a very small liberal arts college in San Rafael, California, and that was fun. And that's also part of my story of getting into podcasting because I was an English lit major, and
Okay.
one of my prerequisite classes I had to take is I had to take a class in journalism. And when I went to go sign up, all the journalism classes were already filled, except for one, which was broadcast journalism.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, dude, broadcast journalism, I can do that. It's like TV. No, I got into the classroom and it's radio. It's radio broadcasting.
Yeah, everybody's like, radio? What the fuck's radio?
And it was a great class. And my professor for the class, very, very interesting lady. I cannot think of her name to save my life right now. Melba Beals.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good job.
Dr. Melba Beals.
Shout out to Dr. Melba Beals.
And she needs no shout outs. She was one of the original Little Rock Nine.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, that's a crazy story. And she was such a taskmaster and a whipcracker when it came to the radio station. You had to, like, every day when you came into class, you had to have 5 different stories ready to go.
So tell everybody about the Little Rock Nine if you have any history there.
If you're unaware of who the Little Rock Nine are, they're the first 9 African-American students integrated into a white school in the Dixie South. And she would always tell us, like, the first day of class, she gets it out of the way. She tells you her story. She tells you about being spit on. She tells you about having things thrown at her. She tells you about dogs, like, being, like, inches from biting her. And she's like, and that's my story. And if you want to read more, you can find it on.
I cannot even fathom that.
Yeah, it's insane. But she got into broadcast. She got into journalism. She became a journalist, and she's a very well-known writer in the world of journalism. And I remember every class we had to come in with 5 stories ready to go, and we had to have all of our sources, and we had to
Remember back when you had to be a journalist, you actually had to have credible sources, and not just one source, but 2 or 3 to support.
Like the AP style book, I still have mine somewhere because that was the book that you had to, like, that was your Bible. You needed to have the AP style book because we followed the Associated Press manner of writing stories and presenting news, and it's such a son of a bitch. You had to have like 6 reputable sources to prove like one fact.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And I'm sure there's still plenty of journalists who still do that. And the way that we present news is totally changed. But I ended up writing like a whole paper on the social economics of AM talk radio. And so, like, what these different radio stations were presenting as like drive time AM talk radio, and what kind of groups of people they're really trying to reach out to, and like what kind of commercials they're playing, and what's their shtick on the air, and like how to, like, who's this relating to, and why are people listening to it. And the conclusion that I came to was that ultimately more working class people want to hear more funny news in the morning, so they'll listen to more of like lighthearted talk. As you start to go up the scale of prominence and you're working more white collar jobs, that you start getting into still funny stuff because everyone likes.
But we want more serious news because we're very serious people.
But until you got to the very top, so at the very, very, very top is Howard Stern.
Oh, okay.
And so Howard Stern, the highest rated AM talk show in the world, everyone knows who Howard Stern is. And the thing is, everybody listens to Howard Stern.
The king of shock radio.
Yeah. Which isn't like what he's doing. What he was doing then isn't very shocking now.
Right.
So then on top of like all this other academic part, you also had to run a radio show at the school. So I was the bottom of the totem pole freshman. So I got Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 11 p.m. So I had to have a radio show running from 9 to 11 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday. And we ended up getting into a little bit of trouble.
2 hours of punk.
No, so the rule is you had to do at least 1 hour of news, and then you had to do 1 hour of entertainment.
An hour of news.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was rough. The news part was rough. But we could also like present.
Were you coming up with your own stuff, or was it just like regurging what you were seeing?
No, you're looking for like press
the stories of the day.
You're looking for press releases. You're looking for like today in history. Like you could present like historical things.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a lot of that. And then once we got into like the entertainment portion of it, that's where we started like getting into trouble. Because we're dumb. And then once you got past your hour of news and you start getting into your hour of entertainment, that's where you start like passing out the beers and stuff, and you're talking silly, and you're getting people to come on the radio and talk about silly stuff that they were doing.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that we had this girl on who was a friend of ours, and she was very open about her promiscuity, and we had wanted to address a rumor with her that we heard that she had gone to a party and some frat boys had given her were feeding her fake plastic grapes, and she was flashing them. And she's like, yep, that's absolutely true. So, and then somewhere along the line, it turned into like, so you're flashing them your big brown areolas. And she's like, yep, absolutely true. They're like teacup saucers. And we just kept rolling with it. And we never said her last name. We acknowledged her just by her first name.
Mm.
And then the next day I'm getting called into the dean of the department, and they want to know like why they have this student who's upset that we were saying that she was exposing herself to frat boys at this party. And she's very upset about this, and we want to know why you're spreading this rumor. And I was like,
she was there telling the story herself.
So no, it was this other girl who just happens to have the exact same first name, and this guy that she was
dating. So it
dating,
wasn't this Susie, it was that Susie. Yeah.
And that Susie's boyfriend had been listening and had heard the story.
Oh, snap.
And so I guess they hadn't been together the night of that party. So he put 2 and 2 together, and she was...
Came up with 5.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to have that girl come back on the show and explain the whole situation, and that it wasn't blah, 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 blah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good times.
Mm-hmm. And then there was another time... Dude, these are such like bad, good stories. So my girlfriend and I, at this time and juncture in my life, we'd gone out to a party. I had drunken heavily, and the dorm rooms shared a bathroom between the two of them. So like, there's a dorm room, there's a bathroom, and there's a dorm room, and the two shared. So I am just throwing up in their sink. Like super lightweighting it. I'm just talking like a dinosaur into the sink. And all I remember is her shared bathroom dorm mate coming in. She's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you fine? Like, we just want to make sure you're okay. Are you okay?" And the story goes like, all I can remember doing is like I pulled my head out of the sink for like 5 seconds, and I saw her. I'm like, "You're just wearing your underwear." And I put my head back back in the sink. And so I had her come on the show and talk about what had happened, because I thought it was really funny. And she's like, "I even brought the underwear just so you could see it a second time." And she like pulls it all out, and I'm like, "This is amazing. This is talk radio. This is why Howard Stern does what he does.
Life will never get better than this.
Because people will do things like this when they, you get them talking and they feel comfortable with you, and it's fun. And that's how I got into like talk radio, and I still listen to talk radio this day. Like, I love NPR. I love hearing podcasts and, getting to be on people's podcasts and then hosting my own. It's a whole lot of fun for me, but also like very therapeutic.
Yeah. So was radio the plan after college, or?
No, I was going to be a high school teacher. but I have
Mhm.
problems sitting still. I couldn't imagine myself doing that.
Mm.
I woke up one day and I was like, I can't sit behind a desk.
So you and I met in San Diego. How do you get from San Rafael to San Diego?
So my sister had moved to San Diego.
She's older?
She's older. She's 8 years older than I am.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she had moved to San Diego. After she had gotten married, her and her husband started their family down here in Rancho Bernardo. And they were basically like, we're staying down here. This is our plan. And I said, you guys are down there. I'll move down there too, because I want to be a part of this. So chased him down here.
Were you and your sister close growing up? I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
a large age. I mean, me and my younger sister there's 10 years between us, and we're super close, but yeah, that's still a huge gap.
A big part of it is because, again, my mom was working.
Mm.
And before my sister left for college and stuff, she was that, that substitute
Mom figure.
in the house. And so she definitely kicked my ass a couple times here and there. And,
Nice.
Showed me the truth of the world.
Yeah. So was she like, yeah, come on down to San Diego? Or was she
she was like,
really, dude?
come on down. Like, you can come live with us for a little bit and get settled in. And
Cool.
once I finally got my shit together and got settled in, unbeknownst to me, like finding the cheapest place to live in San Diego, I didn't know it was going to be Vista, California.
Mm.
And when I told her like, oh yeah, I found an apartment, and I told her where it was, she was like, you are crazy. She's like, that's like one of the most dangerous places in all of San Diego.
Hey, there's some nice areas.
There are some very nice parts of Vista. I was just talking to someone yesterday about Vista, and I was like, it has just the right amount of sketchiness. Like it feels country, it feels small city, it feels big city, it feels like all those things all at the same time, and it's just a bunch of weirdos living together.
So what year did you move there?
2006, 2007.
Oh wow, 2006 and 7. Wow. Okay, so we met not too long after
that. Yeah.
Then wow. Okay, I didn't realize that. So you've been in Vista the whole time.
Oh yeah.
The whole time you've been in San Diego.
To this day, and still live in Vista. Still planning to stay in Vista. As my wife and I like get closer and closer to finally buying a house. That's where we want to live. That's where we want to raise our little dude, is in Vista. Like, we just enjoy living there.
Nice.
And just when you live somewhere, you also have to make sure that you're doing your part to be a part of the community. So we try to take part as much as we possibly can in doing community events or being involved in local city civics and stuff like that. So it's fun. It's punk rock too.
It's punk rock to be part of your community.
Yeah, being part of the community is punk rock, or at least like getting into like the small town politics.
Going to be running for office sometime soon?
No.
No?
No. No. It seems like so much.
No.
Just no. It seems like so much work. I've thought about it, and then I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah.
How did you and your wife meet?
We met. So when I was still in school, I was working at a mall.
Where is San Rafael?
So San Rafael is the second city immediately north of San Francisco. So once you cross the Golden Gate Bridge north out of San Francisco, that takes you into Sausalito. That's the first city.
Okay.
And then immediately after that, you're going to get into San Rafael, California. And so another crazy fact about the school I went to is immediately north of San Rafael, California, is Skywalker Ranch.
Okay.
The school I went to, it's called Dominican University. It was built in like 1908 or something like that. They still use a lot of the same buildings from when the school was founded.
Is that a faith-based school? Or?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's a private Catholic university.
Oh,
yeah.
You grew up Catholic?
No, but they're like, yeah, we're open to anyone. We just want your money.
Yeah, we just want your money.
Yeah. So even crazier is they actually even had like a convent on campus. So so some of the sisters taught classes at the level of professor.
Okay.
Super crazy. But they have all these old buildings that are period accurate for Indiana Jones. So anytime you see Indiana Jones teaching at his school, he's actually at Dominican
No
University
kidding.
in the actual classrooms that still look like that to this day.
That is super cool, bro.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just it's like part of like the Lucas sphere up in that part of California. And then you go.
So was the school originally like built as a set, or
No, it was built as a school. It's just like
Okay.
it was just like right next to Lucas Ranch.
Yeah,
So
it just happened to be.
and he needed a time period appropriate school for Indiana Jones.
Wow,
So he has one right there. You just
Yeah.
use it, and the rest is history.
super cool.
So then then you go into Skywalker Ranch, and they're their own little microcosm too, because that's where all like the magic happens. They have industrial light and magic out there.
Sure.
And then you start going even further north into Santa Rosa, into like Napa and stuff like that. But no one goes into there really. That's like another hour away. But so I was going to school. My wife and I were both working at the exact same mall.
Did she go to the same school, or?
No, she didn't. She was going to FIDM, so Fashion Institute of Design and something. Design and
Something.
Yeah. So she was going to FIDM, and I was going up there. We both worked at the same mall. So we were like mall friends. So we'd like walk by and like wave to each other.
Hey, mall buddy.
Yeah, hey Mo. That's legitimately like what it was. It's like I'd walk by, hey, how's it going?
That's my mall crush. Yeah.
So I've moved, and then she found me on MySpace, and she said, hey, didn't you used to work at this mall? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, that's cool. Like, where'd you go? And I was like, oh, I moved to San Diego. And she was like, oh, what part of San Diego? I said, I live in Vista. She's like, that's where I'm from originally.
Shut up.
And she's like, I'm actually moving back. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So that's how we reconnected, and
Love through MySpace.
yeah, love through MySpace.
Check.
Yeah. That's like a true like period piece right
Oh,
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's gonna
like a very specific period of MySpace is a very specific
Oh yeah.
period of time.
It's gonna be like You've Got Mail. Remember that movie with
Yeah.
Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
They're all doing it through AOL Messenger.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You've got mail. Crazy.
So, and we dated on and off for a while, and eventually we decided, we're gonna get more serious, and we did, and then we got married, and a couple years later we had a kid, and here we are today, and she's doing her thing. She's a wedding florist and a flower farmer, and I'm an idiot and
A flower farmer.
flower farmer.
Does she own a farm, or work for a farm, or own a farm, or?
She runs her own flower farm off of her parents' property in Vista, because they have
Okay.
a couple acres out there. So
Okay.
she farms her own flowers. She tries to do specifically like very like niche, rare flowers that other wedding florists are always looking for.
Mm.
I mean, some of these flowers that she'll grow, they'll like sell for like $30 a stem.
Wow,
Yeah.
Nice.
hmm And she grows a lot of protea.
Time for you to retire, son.
I wish, dude. But yeah, so she keeps herself busy with that, and it's good for her. She didn't like what she was doing originally. She was going up like the corporate ladder for a clothing retailer, and she didn't like that, where it was making her go doing all this other stuff, and the fact that if she was going to go the corporate route, she would have to like travel up to like Irvine, California every single day, and she's not about the driving life like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just an idiot.
Just an idiot. Well, you got to kind of qualify that a little bit, right?
Well,
Not
like
an
I always say,
idiot.
like I'm an idiot because sometimes I realize I'm kind of smart, but the rest of the time I'm like I really don't know much about anything, and
Some people would argue that that's a sign of wisdom.
Well, see, I got this from our coworker Ruben,
Mm-hmm.
and he had told me something along the lines of like, once you can score 100%, you're worthless because you'll think you know everything.
Mm.
And so I'm like, man, that's really reassuring, me being a solid C student.
Yeah.
It just shows I'm apt for learning. I guess I'm still able to learn. No, like I don't take idiot as like a negative or anything like that. It just means that I'm still without full wisdom and knowledge, and I'm still an empty vessel that can get poured into and fed.
Well, I think it's important that helps us stay humble, right? I mean, again, if you're scoring 100 on everything, then yeah, you think you know everything, and as if I learn anything, the older I get, it's how much I don't know, or how wrong I was about the things that I thought I did know.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's a good. I mean, that's a good thing for a leader to have, is that, to be humble, and that ability to learn and keep an open mind. So good.
Yep. So that's what I'm doing, and just punk rocking along,
Punk rocking along.
just making it work, making it happen. Eat a burrito here and there.
Ooh, best burrito in San Diego.
Oh, best burrito in San Diego. Lolita's.
In Vista?
No, there isn't a Lolita's in Vista. Like OG Lolita's in.
Is that Chula Vista that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like those are the best burritos.
Yeah, you can't get a better burrito than San Diego. I used to go out to this place when I was a kid. So by the time I was like 15 or 16, we would ride our bikes out to this place out in El Cajon. I grew up in San Carlos. Go Patrick Henry High School, shout out. And we would ride our bikes down to El Cajon, and God, what was the name of the place? I can't remember the name of the place, but I went there for probably, I don't know, 15 years at least. And like once a year, I would drive down from Temecula just to go get a burrito at this place. And I went down there one day, and they had closed, and I literally had tears in my eyes, bro. I was just like, oh my God. It was so traumatic. Speaking of traumatic events and Mexican restaurants, La Piñata down in Old Town, San Diego, closed within the last, I think I don't know if they were victims of COVID closures or what, but I've been eating there since like the 1970s. Awesome little Mexican restaurant, and went down there, and they had closed, and just like, oh my God, it's so painful.
Oh, I know. I think the world's finally like starting to recover more and more from COVID, but
there was no Mexican food like Southern California Mexican food.
It's completely different. It's growing up in San Francisco, I used to think San Francisco had the best burritos because we had the world famous Mission burrito.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about the Mission burrito is that it's like a hefty, like it's about the size of your forearm, dude.
Okay.
And it has to be wrapped in aluminum foil because it is so like juicy. The sour, there's just something about like the pico and the sour cream that they put in it, like it becomes like this like very watery sauce.
Uh-huh.
So you have to have the aluminum foil to like catch all the juices coming out of it. And so I always thought that those were like the best burritos. And then I moved to Southern California to San Diego, and it was the first time I ever had a California burrito. I'm like, what's a California burrito? Like, I've lived in California my whole life, and I've never heard of this. Yeah. So I had one, and man, French fries in a burrito.
Who'd have thought, huh?
Not me.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. I never really, I mean, growing up, being born and raised in San Diego, I never appreciated the Mexican food until I left. I went somewhere else. I was like, oh yeah, that Southern California Mexican food is just something different.
Oh yeah.
Like even you go down to, like, you think it's Mexican food. If you go down to Mexico, even on the west coast of Mexico, you're going to get the same thing, and it's completely different. You're like, wait a minute, I thought this was Mexican food.
No, it's Southern California Mexican.
Southern California Mexican.
Yeah. There's nothing better than it, dude.
Yeah.
It's legit. It speaks for itself. It's highly prized and often what is it? I can't think of the word right now. My brain just literally like took a turn for the worse. I just got older. Imitated.
Imitated.
Yeah.
Imitated but never replicated.
Yeah. And like it's funny, like if you go on like San Diego like meme pages, and you'll see there's one in particular. It's called ST Humor, and they like will they look for people to like send them photos from like outside of San Diego, of people posting a California burrito, and some of the
Mm,
ideas that people have of like what
yeah.
a California burrito is.
Yeah. Who
Like,
puts ground beef in a burrito?
oh,
Yeah.
like there's weird stuff. Like one of them was like it's all steamed veggies. It's like a healthy burrito.
Ugh.
Yeah, like why would you do that? That's
Yeah.
so
Send that
sad.
back. Right.
Yeah,
Ugh.
man, that's just like a sad burrito. I don't think anyone wants anything to do with that.
So back to the podcast. Are you doing video as well? What platforms are you on? What?
So I don't do video, mainly just because I just never.
Doesn't interest you?
Yeah, not my thing.
Well, you grew up in radio, right?
Yeah, I grew up in radio.
There's no
So
video in
there's no-
radio.
yeah, you got to be descriptive. You got to like,
yeah.
got to keep people.
Use your words. I'm an English major.
Yeah, something like that. So I've always been more into like, I want to get people captivated by a story, by like an emotion. And there's nothing wrong with video. It's just not my like medium. I utilize this really awesome program. It's called Anchor FM. And essentially it's this way to record and stream your podcast, but it automatically puts it into Spotify.
Okay.
So it makes it really easy for me to do that.
Okay. So you
can-
just download the Anchor and then they shoot it out?
yeah, and they do all the hard work for you. There's no charge, because ultimately they once you hit like so many episodes, they give you the option to like monetize. And
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's their business model? How are they making their?
basically like you keep recording and putting stuff out, and they monetize your podcast, and we'll slip a commercial in.
Okay, so it's like AdSense, like YouTube AdSense. Kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
exactly. And it's super easy to use, and I've learned of it from Brian, and he does like a little like spiel at the beginning of his podcast where he says, "Hey, do you want to record a podcast? I know you do."
Uh-huh.
And he talks about how easy it was to record it, and I was like, "I'll give that a try." And I did it, and I was like, that was seriously easy.
That was seriously easy.
Yeah, and it's motivated me to get more serious about podcasting. And with that means like I have to like schedule people to sit down and talk, and I try to work my best around other people's schedules.
Yeah.
I'm always like, "Hey, when's good for you? When's good for you? When's
Sure.
good for you?" And then you have the conversations with people about like, "Hey, what are you comfortable with talking about? What are you uncomfortable with talking about?" Most people are like, "Whatever, I don't care." But every now and then there's
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say whatever, but then, if you're guys like us who want to kind of go beneath the surface of stuff, like, then they're like, "Oh, I hadn't actually thought I might have to talk about that."
yeah, and that's hard sometimes. Just in general, just opening yourself up to be vulnerable. Again, it's something that's
Yeah.
kind of weird, especially for guys. It's not something that we archetypically are about, is showing our vulnerability. I think it's
Mhm.
come out more and more and more, in great strides. But the second you tell someone like, "Hey, I'm going to ask you some really hard questions," they tend most of the times they're usually good sports about it.
Yeah.
It's-
That's why I kind of struggle with that, like wanting to be obviously respectful of my guests and their privacy and stuff like that, but also wanting to be super authentic and get below that surface stuff. I mean, like I asked you today before you come up, is there anything that you don't talk about or don't want to talk about? Because obviously I want to be respectful of your time and your life and stuff like that. While at the same time, like there's some super interesting shit that you do. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that.
Once you start doing like super interesting stuff, or like you do things that are perceived as super interesting, you just have to accept that people are going to want to talk to you about it.
Sure.
You put yourself out there. It's going to be like what makes you different or what makes you stand out. And you just got to talk about it. And sometimes it's going to be really fun. Sometimes it's going to be, very therapeutic. It can also be, taking you down like memory lane where you start thinking about like all the stupid shit you used to do.
Sure.
Or still do. And you just have to kind of go along with it.
Yeah.
And like I said, like ultimately with an episode, I always want to try to like get some sort of emotion out of somebody. I want to talk to them about something. And yeah, it should be fun. We should be able to laugh. We should be able to talk about, stupid stuff. Um, but like I did an episode about being your kid's hero and um what happens, when your kid realizes that you're not a hero, that you're not Superman, like you're not.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's some, that's where it starts to get deep. And, we talk about who our heroes were growing up. And ultimately most people are like, oh, my dad was my hero. And I'm like, not mine.
Yeah. I think that's one of my biggest fears or questions about podcasting is that I do want to be super vulnerable, but I've done some stuff that I'm not super proud of, and I would hate to have something out there in the interwebs that would cause my kids to think less of me or to be embarrassed of me or for me. And so it's going to be an interesting journey trying to navigate that.
The Joe Rogan conversation style of that most podcasts utilize, it's great. I'm also a big fan of like scripting stuff too. So I'll write like an introduction script that has like an overarching kind of narrative like I want to talk about before the episode like actually transpires or like the interview starts. And like just have my list of like points that I would like to discuss. Just so I can get conversations back on track, because me, dude, my brain can go a million miles an hour. And
yeah, we just been totally flying by the seat of our pants. I got no notes, just work without a net and just like see where we go.
But,
right?
And sometimes that's the most natural approach and it works. And when it works, you just go with it.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But for my purpose, like I love having a narrative that I can use to kind of bring things together. For my next episode, I'm going to be having like multiple interviewees, and each one is going to kind of fulfill this different role in a community, and why that role in a community is so important.
So it sounds like you kind of like you like to put order to chaos. A little bit. Is it because your brain is so chaotic that you feel like you have to put some order to it?
My brain is so chaotic, and ultimately I get all my idea. Like, so I get an idea in my head. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to talk about. And then I have to like sift through all of my music, and I have to find a song that matches that message. And that's where things get interesting.
Gotcha.
And then
So you're trying to match the song to the theme of that episode.
And then I'll put together like a playlist too. So it'll be a bunch of songs. So it'll be like a soundtrack for the episode. Cause I think it's cool. Like I remember growing up and like being a dumb romantic kid, and you would burn CDs for people.
Yeah.
Like there's a girl.
So, yeah, back in the real old days, we would make a cassette.
Yeah.
A mixed cassette tape.
And so we don't make mixtapes anymore. We don't burn CDs anymore, but I still want people to like have something to like listen to outside of the podcast, so they can, make emotional connections with music. Because again, that's a big part of what my message is the importance of music and the emotional connections that we make with it, and how we take those emotions and deal with our lives as fathers. And that ultimately that's where I want to see the show go. Every now and then I'll have a couple extra drinks that I probably shouldn't, and I'll do something flippant. Like the other day, I had a couple extra beers, and I was like, my goal now is I'm going to have Pedro Pascal on the show. Like that's going to be my show.
It's good to have goals, man.
It is. And like, there's a part of me like after having posted that, like, I'm going to check and see if he saw it.
Right.
I didn't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to check and see if he saw it. Okay.
I'm gonna tag that motherfucker and see. What
Oh
he
yeah,
says.
dude. Like,
Yeah, he'll probably respond right away.
but and that's also the beauty of the internet is it makes so many people so like available to you.
Sure.
People you wouldn't imagine being able to like talk to.
I mean, because there's a chance that he will see it, and there's a
I
chance that he
know.
might respond, right?
How
I mean,
crazy would
there's
that be?
That's always a possibility.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
But see, it's I'm I'm not living in fear of failure.
Right.
Like I fail, I don't get a response back. That's
Well,
failure.
Fuck that guy. Anyway.
Yeah. I'll still watch his fucking shows.
Yeah. Right.
But success is like this beautiful, amazing thing that could happen. And success in this point would, getting a response back, like any sort of like, sign that he saw it and thinks it's pretty cool.
I was going to ask what would be success for your podcast? What would be success for you?
My last episode had like the most listeners ever. I think it was like 40 something.
Mm-hmm.
And I call that success. I call any episode that I post and I get a listener, I'm like, that's a success. Like one person heard it, even if it was my mom, I'll call it a success.
Yeah.
There's no, like, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I've never monetized the show. Like I have no ambition to like, make it make it work or make it a thing where I'm going to get paid for it. And she was like, "Oh, you say that now."
Yeah, that's stupid.
but part of it's like this, like part of it's like the punk rock side of me where I'm like, no, like that's
I'm gonna stay pure.
Yeah, I'm stay pure to the DIY and for the scene.
Yeah.
I don't want any of your corporate money. I'm not gonna sell out.
Yeah.
And there's another part of me that's like, man, it'd be really nice to have a couple extra bucks here and there.
I definitely struggled with that a little bit at the beginning. Like everybody always asks you, like, why do you want to do a podcast? That's still a hard question to answer. Like, why? I mean, a lot of it's just like fun, dude. It's something fun to do. But I also get a lot from conversations with people, and I get sick and tired of just like talking about the weather,
So I think a lot of podcasts, and this is me being, very verbose and about it. I think in the future, these are probably going to be what people find and use to, decipher a little bit about what was going on in our worlds and our day-to-day lives.
Oh, like in a historical sense?
Yeah, like we look at, people's personal journals from, the 17th century, the 18th century, and we use that to piece together what life was really like during those periods of times and how people really felt about things.
Yeah.
And, how they really spoke and what they're, what were they doing? What was their free time? What was their work time? I really think this is the equivalent of keeping almost like a daily journal or a diary. It's just another way that, we as people can document what's going on in our lives and how we're feeling and transfer it out of our brains and put it into the world, whether it's on video or it's a recording, or maybe even if you date back way how old I am. I remember like having like there was like dead journal, there was live journal where you could just like write, and other people could look at it if you wanted them to. It's the same way that people document everything on their Instagram or their Facebook, or their now it's TikTok. It's just another way for us, like innately as human beings, we want to document what it is we're doing.
And I feel like it's like it's our way to leave our legacy, right? Like I think we have this, I don't know if it's necessarily a fear, but of being forgotten when we're not here any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch the Cleared Hot podcast, and Andy was talking the other day about sort of along those lines, and that he's got several episodes with his father where they get on and they just, they talk about, father-son stuff, and it's going to be super cool when his dad's no longer around, that he's always going to have this to be able to look back on, and to know what, what his dad was thinking and what his values were. And so I kind of think about that with my kids too, is that, this will hopefully always be something that's out there, and even when I'm not around to maybe give my advice or my opinions or something about whatever, they'll kind of be able to look back on that and say, what would dad have thought about that?
Oh
Maybe they
yeah.
can kind of get an idea or a sense of where I was at, and
Mm.
maybe, kind of maintain some of that connection. So I don't know.
It's funny how prevalent podcasts have become. Um, and when you think about it, it's really just like a gone by an era of technology. Um, I always equate them to being like old time radio, where people are like we're regressing in a really positive way. We're going away from having to like watch a lot of media, where now we want to hear media and hear what
Hmm.
people have to say about things. And you go back to, you know, news talk radio. Um, you listen to some, like, my wife's way into like murder casts. So if anyone ever murders me, it was probably her.
We know who to look at.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but it does, I think that goes back to like a bygone era of, you know, when radio was king, and people, if you wanted entertainment, if you wanted a media source, you had to listen to your radio. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of where people are going back to, is they're, I think our eyeballs have become like overstimulated with screens and everything like that. And people just want to go back to just like, I just want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a need for it, and everyone has like a niche that they want to listen to, or that, you know, makes them feel, they recognize immediately as like, that's the song of my tribe. Like I have very similar thoughts,
Mhm.
or this sounds like something very interesting to me. I'm not part of this tribe, but I'd really like to hear what this person has to say about these issues. They seem like they have a very interesting outlook on the world and how they exist in it. And it's just fun to do. It's fun just to sit and, like you said, just like have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Especially in a long form, hearing other people's thoughts and how they think helps me to kind of solidify my own thoughts and the way that I think. And again, with the long form, I feel like our attention spans are so short
Oh yeah.
anymore. Like I can barely get through a page of a book without checking my phone. Like, hey, what just happened on Instagram in the last fucking 45
Oh
seconds?
yeah.
Like, come on, dude, really? I mean, I used to be able to I would read a book for, my attention span was just hours long. And now, yeah, I can, like I said, if I can pay attention for 60 seconds, it's a big deal. So it's nice to kind of just be able to slow down a little bit, and on a long drive or whatever, to be able to listen or watch a podcast.
And I think people find themselves listening to podcasts and slowly like a nodding their head in agreement,
Mm-hmm.
and or sometimes even the opposite. They're like, no, that's bullshit. Like, I'm gonna keep listening because I want to hear what other bullshit you
Yeah,
have
what
to
other
say.
bullshit you have to say?
And that's what's great about, you know, broadcast journalism, broadcast radio, podcasts in general, is you just let your eyeballs have a second to see what's going on in the world. Let your ears do some of the heavy lifting and process what other people are saying and talking about.
Mhm.
You might hear something that you needed to hear, um, but you would never find yourself in a position that you would, you know, go to a lecture and hear someone say this, or you never find yourself in a, you know, in a higher college course and someone's talking about, you know, very profound um, things, or philosophies, and suddenly now you find yourself hearing someone talk about these things and expressing it in a way that you can connect with, and digest. And that's what's great about podcasts. And also like the conversation, getting to sit down and talk to someone and, have a one-on-one conversation. We live in a world where so much of our conversation is through text or it's through email, and, people, forget about death by Outlook. Like your Outlook box it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there reading work emails every single day, that is what's going to kill you. You're going to die from Outlook. Sit down, have a conversation. You don't have to record it. Just sit down, have a long conversation. You don't have to go anywhere special. You can just be in your car and have it. You can be in your car and listen to it. And again, that's what's great about podcasts.
Excellent. Let's go get some lunch, bro. You hungry?
Oh man. Yeah.
All right. Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me right here, right now in your house. But generally, I'm in my house. You can find my podcast. It's Punk is Dad, not Punk is Dead. Punk's not dead. Punk is Dad podcast on Spotify as well as Anchor FM. I'm working right now to get it into iTunes and wherever else people get their podcast from. You can follow me on Instagram at punkisdad.sd.ca. No, it's underscore. Yeah, I don't know. You'll find me.
You'll find it.
You'll find it.
Not brain surgery.
Can't miss it. I'm the idiot guy. You can't miss it. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming, brother.
No, thanks for having me.
Yep.
Yeah, we're shaking hands if you can't see
We're shaking
it.
hands. Yeah. All right, let's go eat.
All right.
Later.